Welcome to our poetry town council meeting, the regular meeting on May 17th, 6:30 p.m. at Faith Temple Baptist Church. We welcome minority views as well as majority views to be heard. We want you to feel heard, valued, and connected to your town and its council. We do ask that you show respect. There's no profanity allowed and no slanderous or personal attacks. If that happens, you may be asked to leave. With that said, we have roll call. Our new Deputy Town Secretary, Elizabeth Patterson, is going to make roll call.
Sorry, bear with me just a second.
She's having to get all the items.
Mike Jaffe.
Here.
Brian Vinson.
Here.
Mayor Tarasenkovich.
Here.
Terry Fowler.
Here.
Simeon White.
Here.
Tom Anderson.
Here.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Quorum is confirmed. Councilmember Fowler will say the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's rise, and then we'll have the invocation after.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. To remain standing, we'll pray. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day, and we thank you for all the blessings that you bestow on us in our town, Lord. And we thank you for the citizenry that's come tonight to be involved in our city, Lord. We just pray your wisdom over each and every one of us, Lord, and we just pray that you just guide us and lead us, and we pray for safe travels on the way home. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fowler. Okay, under items of community interest, our main town secretary, Teresa Scholander, is out longer than expected. Her return is now not expected until August, and that is because of medical issues. Number 2, our Campground Community Cemetery Board is to have a cleanup day on Saturday, May 21st, 10 to 12. They're cleaning up the old flowers and trimming some things, so you're invited to that if you have family there. Okay, under G, receive reports and discuss the following. We have our financial report. So the April end of 2022, the beginning bank balance was $39,765.01. We received the Titan and Reed franchise fees. Titan's was $1,219.50. Reed was $1,535.50. We did have some purchases. We have now 2 more microphone stands. We found that the homemade block ones, although they were nice and rustic, they created a lot of feedback. So anyway, we're thankful for those. We paid for our newsletter printing. We did pay for the laptop, the printer, and the Wix website. Our lawn service, we paid for a reimbursement for a franchise fee collected in error. And then we paid for electricity. Our total ending balance is $40,963.27.
Can we move the agenda or the financial report to the regular agenda for discussion?
Can a report we do that on? Do you know? I think consent. This is just the report. We can't do that. It's just a report. It's not on consent agenda.
So we are moving into regular agenda.
We can't do that. It's just a report. You can bring.
Sorry, Brian, I couldn't hear you.
It doesn't matter now. Anyway, we can't do it.
Okay, under item 2, town map clarifications. So Dorothy Dillon, the GIS map professional, is having to work late. She cannot be here, but we did upload this afternoon from Stovall Survey, the official survey. I didn't know it prior, but after the canvassing election, the Hunt County actually paid for the surveyor to firm up everything and to validate everything, and so they did that. There's a few little changes on the map, very small. It's like 1% maybe. Those are on the website now. We did change the map. Now, you'll notice it has POEs and POBs, and that is surveyor language, and that's just, I'm asking for something to clean that up, but for right now, that's all I could get. It's a very busy time for them, you can imagine. So the POE is just point of, or POB is point of beginning, POE is point of ending. So it does kind of clutter up the map, but the map there has been certified as the official and correct. Okay. So that's clarification. Number 3, Planning and Zoning Report, Mike Griffin. Thank you, Mike.
Mike Griffin, 6247 Dry Creek Run in Poetry. The Planning and Zoning Committee is continuing to work very hard on crafting a document that we hope will be acceptable to at least a majority of the soon-to-be determined residents of this community. We're borrowing heavily from existing ordinances from other cities and taking what we can from there that we think will be beneficial, and going through those very carefully and putting together things that will we think will be for the benefit of our community. We don't have a document ready to prepare at this moment, but we set a target for ourselves to have a working draft of the ordinance to the mayor and each of the council members by June the 9th. This will not be ready for public discussion at that point because there's a tremendous amount of work that still has to be done. Some of the ordinances that we are working with are over 70 pages in length. We're trying to pare that down. We're trying to figure out what works for us and what does not. But we feel like we're making good progress. We're continuing to go through the document, and our objective at this point is to have a working draft to each of you by June the 9th, so that then shortly after we can get your feedback on where we are at that point. We will continue to work on the document, and we hope that we'll have something crafted that could be available for public comment in the early fall, if all goes well. Question?
Thank you, Mike. So the P&Z committee has been meeting nearly every single week, and that's made up of 7 citizens who volunteered and 2 council members. So that is Councilmember White and Councilmember Fowler. And we're very appreciative of all their hard work that they're putting in on that. Very appreciative. Okay, going on to the consent agenda. The minutes for the April 17th are not completed. We're kind of been in without a secretary. Our deputy secretary is still, well, it has to be, you'll see that in the second one, it has to be confirmed. So although she is working over here, she's volunteering. So thank you for Liz. So those are not ready. It's quite, especially for someone who's not at the meeting, it can be an arduous process, as you can imagine. So number 2, the employment contract with Deputy Town Secretary. So it's pretty straightforward. We had this similar contract with the former secretary, and so it's very pretty similar. I think Emily, I tried to do what I could do, and then I had her put her stamp of approval on it. Did you have anything else to say?
No, I was just going to say we didn't have to add too much, just clarifying that the deputy town secretary will serve when the town secretary cannot. Okay. So that's really the only difference between your town secretary's contract and this one.
Okay.
Can we move this to regular agenda item?
Can you? Yes.
Second?
Okay, so so we're going to move it's been requested to move the employment contract to the regular agenda, so we'll just put that in front of number 1. Okay, number 3, the ordinance approving no through trucks within town, routes within town. We had already approved that ordinance, and so this is just the written part of that. And so we had already voted on that and approved to have that done, and that was for the no-through trucks over 33,000 GVWR. And the reason we did it that way was because after talking with our sheriff, he said that, you know what, if you have to have a scale, it's impractical, and it's expensive. And so if you just, the GVWR is listed on each truck, it's just a kind of a uniform way to be able to tell. Now that, again, that's not destination trucks, so if they're building a house, they're totally fine. Or if they have a destination within that area, it's completely fine. This is just for those just trying to cut through for convenience sake. And we're trying to preserve our roads, so that's what this is about.
Do we have to move this to the agenda item just to clarify the chart?
Yeah, I make a motion, we move
Okay.
this to the regular too, so we can have some
All right.
discussion on it, please.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and move the ordinance approving no through trucks so we can discuss that to the regular agenda.
Who was the second?
I was.
Okay.
So I didn't hear Mike.
Move to the main agenda.
Okay, on those, we don't have to take a vote, right? It just is made.
Just a second, and you can move
It's
it
just
to
a,
the
yeah,
regular.
I thought so. Okay. Okay, so moving to the regular agenda then, we're going to go ahead and put the employment contract as let's just put that as A. Okay. So we'll talk about the
Tara,
employment contract.
Before we move on, so to be clear, we didn't approve anything on the consent agenda, right? Because we don't have minutes, so
Right, nothing's
Okay.
been approved on the consent.
we'll
Right.
approve those when we see them, not in advance.
We'll probably have 3 sets of minutes next time. So our new deputy secretary will be busy. All right, so,
So I asked to move number 2, and this is a council question. Emily, because we discussed this on 512, we have the opportunity to go back and, okay, I spoke with Emily on 512 about the process that we voted to hire a deputy secretary. Is this a chance for us to go back and make that right before we move forward?
We can do that now. So we had in our ordinance that we would create the position of deputy town secretary. So in our motion approving this contract, if we could also have a motion that creates the position, just so that we're to the T following our ordinance.
Well, to be clear, the ordinance said we had the discretion, right? We did not pre-create.
Right.
It just said we could create that and lots of other titles as necessary. And so I'm with Terry that I would like to see us get in the habit of first we approve as a council the position, and then we stock that position or fill it with whomever. So
I do
appreciate
think these are extenuating circumstances. We approved Teresa Scholander, and she was set to start May 1st, but then had to have an additional surgery, and it moved it back till August, and so we're in need. And so, yes.
I don't think there's
agree.
any argument of the need, for sure. My question was just about the process to make sure that we,
Thank you,
yeah,
John.
so the need's there. I'm not debating that with you, but as a growing town, my question was, did we get the process right? And that answer was no, and I just want to go back while we can and make that process correct. So moving forward, any position that we add to staffing, we will vote on adding that position and then vote on hiring that position.
Yeah, unless you delegate that authority to some, section of the council as it exists, as the ordinance is written, that's
Okay.
correct.
So this would allow us tonight to, 1, vote that we need the position, and 2, fill it?
Yes.
Fair enough.
Okay, so is there a motion to create that position? See, that was in the ordinance, so I'm a little confused as to why that's,
The position
Yeah.
wasn't created, so I move that we create the position.
It was, however, in the ordinance, so it was a possibility.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, discretionary.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so the motion's been made and seconded by Fowler that we create the deputy secretary position. All those in favor?
And approve the contract.
All in one
We can do it
motion?
all.
Oh, you can do it all in one?
I'm
Okay.
sorry if you were going to do two. I just didn't want you to forget. You can do it either way. Sorry to
Okay.
We can do it
interrupt.
either way. Okay, I just kind of wanted to see how, with the breakdown on that.
Okay,
So,
Can we pause for 1 second for Councilmember Chapman
Yeah, I
to?
think I'm okay with it.
Okay.
okay. So then on the second thing that we were discussing, is there any issue with any of the content of the contract? And when I was trying to revise it, I had question as to if all of our contracts and our, someone has to sign it, so a lot of times it's the mayor and the secretary, it says town secretary, can the deputy secretary sign that? And you said yes. So
Yes.
that was my big question.
Yeah, and then it's clear in the contract that she has all the power and authority of the town secretary when she's acting in that role. So anything the town secretary has the authority to do, she will be able to do.
Okay.
So she'll need the same bonding, she'll need the
Yes.
same school, or the same instruction,
Yes.
et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
Okay.
Anything else?
And we're in agreement, this is a 1099 position?
Yes. And I will say that Liz is a very generous heart, so in a 1090 position, she invoices the town, and she has already said she wants to do a lot of volunteer. Just saying.
Thank you.
And we're grateful.
I'll make a motion to pass the ordinance for the deputy town secretary.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept the employment agreement by Fowler and seconded by Benson. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Okay, so then moving on to the ordinance approving no through truck routes within town. So we'll just call this B. And this is ordinance 2022-5-01.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that because this came out before, you said that the town map was solidified yesterday. Do the ordinance, or do the
Well,
survey match up with the chart that's on this ordinance is my question.
okay, so to answer your question, it's a very good question. So I actually let me clarify. The map went up today on the website, but I had already received it prior.
Okay.
So in fact, I had to use it to make this accurate.
Okay.
So
So they correlate.
yes, and then I confirmed with Ms. Dillon if I was correct, and she said, yes, your verbiage is correct. You know, remember, she's the expert, the 3 years of training to use the GIS, and I was just trying to do my best, and she did confirm that that was correct.
Another question, section 2.04, placement of traffic control devices. The town council authorizes the mayor to provide for the placement and direction of such signs, et cetera, et cetera. Placement and direction, but not necessarily the purchase. Am I reading that correctly? So we'd still have to approve a purchase.
And I guess we could add it,
We can add it.
because that would just delay it another month.
Well, you can pass with just direction for me to add the word purchase in.
We agreed, I thought, where these were going to be placed, so what's the additional discretion on putting them wherever you feel like you want to put them? I mean, aren't we going to put them where we said we're going to put them?
Well, TxDOT said that if we give them a flag or whatever, they'll put it where their flag is, and I was just going to try and go with, of course, this. But, hey, if one of you want to do it, that'd be great.
Well, I think that, to me, the spirit of it is we're going to put them at these locations. That's what the council agreed on.
If there
We're not
could-
going to double the number and suddenly they're
Right.
all over the place. I mean, they're just,
No, this really means that you're going to follow the TxDOT manual.
yeah, that's
yeah.
fair. If they
Yeah.
say
Okay.
put them in 3 feet or 2 feet
Yeah.
or all
But
that
I
stuff.
think Councilmember Vinson's point is valid. It doesn't say that I have the authority to purchase that, and I think.
You can motion to.
But I
add
guess that
I want to make sure that the rest of the council is understand, again, going back to procedural, I want to make sure that the rest of the council understands that that's what we're doing with this. That we're giving her the permission to go ahead with placing these signs, which means we have to acquire the signs in order to place them.
And of course, if the council is good with Councilmember Anderson and White, who are the signatories on the account, I mean, I can't do anything without one of them anyway, but however you want to do it.
So can we amend that sentence to say for the purchase, placement, and direction of such signs?
Yes.
Do you have a move? You moved.
Before I make an official motion, I'd like to see head nods or something.
Head nod.
That we're authorizing purchase as well? Purchase
Well,
of the signs?
we have to buy the sign before we can place the sign.
Exactly.
So I thought we'd already agreed to buy the signs, but yeah, I'm fine with that. My head is
So-
not.
Okay, so I move that we place the word purchase and comma before placement in the sentence.
Is there a second?
I'll second. I'll second it.
Okay.
That was Fowler.
Okay, so we have a motion by Benson and seconded by Fowler to amend this ordinance to include the purchase, comma, placement, and direction of such signs on item 2.04.
This isn't the final passage. There will still be time. Yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry, you're out of,
there is a.
So can we open this up to public comment since it was moved to
it
the
has
regular agenda?
not been,
So Andy, since we moved this from consent to regular, we can allow?
okay, so they haven't signed up, though.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're right.
We're not to the point of voting on the document, the ordinance. We're on the point of amending it at this point. So I'd like to get the amendments in before you guys discuss it, just to make sure that you're discussing everything and we're not changing something after you talk about it.
Okay, so what's live on the table right now is an amendment to include the purchase
Of the signs, correct.
of the signs, and it's been motioned and seconded.
And, okay, so who seconded it?
Fowler.
Okay,
did.
so all those in favor of
Wait.
adding that amendment? And that is 5-0 to amend that little section, 2.04, and that passes unanimously.
And-
So to that question, we've already passed this ordinance, so to bring it up again would be kind of strange, would it not?
If it's,
Well,
Yeah,
we-
to explain, like, why comment on this isn't necessarily relevant, it was on the consent agenda because it was already something they approved, and this is just the paper version. So besides their that public comment on what was the draft occurred at the prior meeting, and they're just amending the paper version of what was
And we-
approved.
Yeah, we've already got quite
So
a long night.
As a point of order, we keep saying we've seen this before. What we voted on was to have this drafted. Unless somebody else has received something different than I've received, this is the first time I've seen this document in this form. Has somebody else seen an earlier copy? Tom? Simeon? Okay, so I think we need to be clear, this is not,
That's fine, I was in the hospital, so it may have not been sent.
well, that's
it just
fine. I'm
had
not,
been
I'm not
drafted,
debating you.
so-
I'm just clarifying point of order for the council. We have never seen this document prior to 48 or 72 hours ago when Tara sent us the package. So I don't want us to say, well, we've already approved this. We haven't. We approved the creation of this document, which is very different from the actual document. I'm not saying the words changed, but we did not go through the words tonight. We just said, yes, I'm fine with the concept of drafting a document to prohibit heavy traffic and put up some signs, but that's it. So I think discussing it, in my mind, is appropriate, because this is the first discussion we're having about this document, which
the
didn't
actual
exist.
ordinance. Well, let me get my clarification on section 3 out, and then we can do whatever we need to do. But again, it's 2.04, section 3, midway through the paragraph. Any person, firm, entity, or corporation violating any of these provisions, blah, 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 each day. So does this mean that if somebody has multiple, and I put it in air quotes, infractions on the same day, it is still just one offense.
And a separate offense is deemed committed upon each day during or which a violation occurs. Yeah, as written, it would be one per day.
Thank you.
Did
Okay,
you
there
want it
any-
a different way, or?
I was just making sure I was
Yeah, I mean, that seems reasonable. I
And
can't
it-
imagine they're going to poke us 10 times in one day. They're going to come in, be,
Yeah.
corrected and go away.
I just want to make sure I understand what we're discussing.
Are there any comments by council on this ordinance as written? Okay, so we have senior partner, Andy Messer here, attorney with the law firm. So we've never opened up a consent item to agenda without prior, because we close our comments normally. They sign up between 6 and 6:30. So this is kind of a rare situation. So what is your suggestion? Because we've never.
Public comment?
Yes, sir.
So public has the right to speak on any item on the agenda.
Okay.
It's up to each city whether you have a procedure.
Okay.
signing out,
Yeah.
mandate that or not. I don't know.
They do. They have to sign up prior to the meeting, but we didn't, yeah.
It's up to your council how that is done. You have a
We
rule.
bump this to the back of the agenda and give them a chance to sign up between
Okay,
now and then.
that's a good idea. Okay, so Councilmember Benson made a good request, I believe. I think it makes a lot of sense. Let's bump this to after the first break, and then that will give those who want to sign up a chance to sign up to speak. And that would be more fair to all, I think. Okay? Okay, so we'll just move that to after the break, and that depends on how fast we go on everything else. All right. So, agenda item number 1, discuss and consider an ordinance for the right-of-way permitting within the town. Okay. We discussed the right-of-way permitting, and therefore we had, I think we approved the legal counsel go ahead and writing that ordinance. It was overwhelmingly popular to do that. So that right-of-way permitting, do we have?
And so this has to track Chapter 284 pretty closely, state law. This is a simpler template. So a lot of it's going to have to be in there. Like I said, it tracks certain sections of Chapter 284. Some of it, as it stands currently, doesn't apply to you guys, like having a design manual for how things have to be repaired, if things are buried, what it's got to look like on the top, all those sorts of things. So you guys don't have that. So right now, as this draft ordinance exists, it's going to reference things like a design manual. So just know that this is a draft. I'm not putting this in front of you as the final version. It's here just to discuss what you like and don't like about it. And if you haven't had time to read it word for word, feel free to send me like a red line once you review on your computer, and we can discuss that way too. So this isn't necessarily on for action tonight, but more on for discussion.
Okay, so it's 14 pages. You knew I wasn't going to go without
That's a lot.
a question. So first, but I could go line by line, but I want to start at a higher level. Let me ask, what was the direction given to develop this ordinance? Because I'm confused about the result of the ordinance versus the discussion that we have. So if I get that piece of clarification, maybe it clarifies
It
a lot.
was pretty basic, just create a right-of-way from the discussion we had previously.
Okay, so I'll go into a little more detail. One of the things that we discussed when we were discussing bringing this ordinance up was the installation of monster broadband in the area, and they have a lot of pedestals going in. We want to make sure we know where they are. This ordinance only addresses wireless providers. So by its very nature, this ordinance would not apply to monster broadband. It wouldn't apply to AT&T or Spectrum or anyone else. So that was
So we
that
can
was my
modify
mind.
that, and that's why it's just a draft, I think. So we need to, I think, in order to save time and thus money, they kind of borrow from some of the other things they're doing. But yes, that's why we need your input. And so any of that area where it says that, we need to add that.
Well, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
So Brian, the conversation I remember us having was we felt like it was prudent for the town to understand who was working in our right-of-ways, right? Who's out there digging up our ditches, possibly interfering with other services that are pre-existing. And if a citizen calls in and says, hey, there's a guy out in the ditch with a trencher, do we know who he is? We didn't look like idiots because we didn't, right? We would say, oh yeah, that's Monster, they filed a permit and all that. So I think what we were trying in my mind to capture was just a basic understanding of who's doing work in the town of Poetry in the right-of-ways.
Right. And
So
that
we
was-
could keep track of it, and then over time, we might layer in more complexity, but right now, we just want them to turn in some drawings of what they intend to do, turn in a drawing of an as-built, how it's actually installed, if that differs, and then we'll keep copies of that, so in the future, we can say, don't dig here because there's fiber optic cable or something.
And
yeah, and that was
meant
my
for their
understanding of the
safety and-
intent as
yeah.
well. So, but yeah, it's just any terrestrial-based, any cable company, any broadband provider who uses fiber optics rather than using wireless services would not be covered by this ordinance. So I think we need to really take this one and whittle on it and see what we can do to come up with
So
it.
what wording would you use to include all that?
Oh,
Now,
It's riddled
since you are-
throughout, so I mean, the entire intent of this one is focused at wireless providers in the public right-of-way. So, I mean,
so how would you word it to
we could go back
include
to communications providers.
all communication
We
providers?
could go to
Okay.
utilities.
We also need to add water.
Pardon?
We also need to add water. I know we discussed we didn't
Yeah.
want to tax our pre-existing water, but anything moving forward.
I think they should also tell us where those lines are.
Yeah, that's
Well,
what
that's
I'm
right. I
saying,
mean, even if
utilities
it's,
as well.
even in the future, if it's us doing work in the right-of-way, it needs to be
We
documented.
kind of need to know so we don't mess
Yeah,
something
we
up.
got to keep track of it.
So Emily, is
so-
there any way to say any work done in the right-of-way?
Well, state law is going to govern a lot, broadband too, so let me do some research and let's do
Okay.
another version of this, okay?
Can we hook her up? I don't see our gentleman with Union Valley. Wayne, what's your guy's name that works for Spectrum? Neats?
Bruce
Bruce.
C.
Yeah, I wonder if we can get Bruce. He does a lot of construction
He
in
does.
right-of-ways and on poles and things like
Yeah.
that. I mean, he's probably seen this kind of ordinance somewhere. So
I know he showed up with the actual application that was very detailed, and he even put our seal on it, and it was, good of him.
Nicely
But
done.
we could probably do something like that.
Okay, maybe Wayne, at the break, I can get his number from you. I mean, he's my
I have
neighbor. He
his
lives
number,
behind me. I just don't
believe,
talk
but
to him a lot.
Okay.
So do we just send any questions or edits?
Well,
I mean,
there's-
not break OMA, do we send them?
There's a couple other specific questions I have that I would like to try to avoid as many rewrites as possible.
Okay.
So on page 5 there at the bottom, section 1, TAC 05, permit applications, paragraph B, consolidated permit application. We say that consolidated permit application with the town for not more than 30 network nodes, and I was curious about that number. Why 30 or not 3 or 300?
It's just what's typical in other ordinances, and since this was a draft for discussion, I just didn't want to spend a lot of time.
Okay, so it's something we can change?
Yes.
Okay. And would it be something that we could change to be as broadly as they must file a permit and not specify the number of nodes? Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. And then on page 8, section 1, TAC 07, town review process, paragraph B, approval or denial of application. The point 3 there for transport facilities. So we have it's incumbent upon us to approve or deny a completed application for transport facilities, which is the backhaul that the providers use to get to the internet to service you, no later than 21 days after the town receives the complete application. If it's 21 days, that may not align with our calendar.
That's true.
So, I've ordered a lot of these facilities, and
Yeah.
I know that they can take 6 months to go in, so I wouldn't see an undue hardship of bumping it to 60 days.
Yeah, we can do that.
That would be okay. Okay,
Yeah.
so we can make that kind of broad
Yes.
change.
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't want to promise changes to everything because some stuff is state law specific, but not everything in here. So I encourage you to do your red lines and send them to me, and then I'll communicate back what can be changed and if there's something that's just contradictory to what state law says.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay. Hey, any other comments?
Yes, just a couple. We've pretty much covered everything that I was looking at for these. Besides the 21 days that you mentioned, there's some 10 days in here that I'd also like to see extended
Okay.
so that we can take a look at it. But besides that, I just wanted to make sure that one of the things that it was referencing that we're not supposed to have is in 1-09, the applicable fees and rental rates to the town, and it says rental rates are set forth in Appendix A. I'm guessing that's just something that some other towns have used that's in there.
Are you talking about Appendix A specifically? Yes. This is truly largely a template just to get some discussion going so I know where to go with you guys without spending my time with wheels running when you don't need to pay for that. So, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers my
Okay.
question.
Okay,
Just want
and
to make sure we weren't missing something here.
No, it's true. We probably just should have listed it different just for discussion so you guys, it was more clear to you. But that's why I put draft on it so you guys didn't think it was final. It was me to kind of get your feedback and come back with you with the final.
And just to reiterate, for those of you who don't know, we cannot discuss, unless something is on the agenda, we cannot discuss it among the quorum. So that's why we have to discuss everything in front of you unless it's an executive session, just so you know. So this one is complicated, and so now that it's been opened up to the open session, then we can modify it as needed, and then they can.
So would it work best moving forward? It seems like Simeon and Brian have the most knowledge. This is definitely not my arena. Can they get together and give you some
Yeah, since it's
edits,
just,
and then you can send us a draft to review?
since it's just two of them, that works. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So do we need to table this or just do nothing?
Can we make them?
You
We
could
don't-
make a
I'm
motion
pleading
to
ignorance.
create a committee of the two
committee of those
members
two?
and then
Okay.
direct them to provide
Is
me
it-
the council comments.
Okay, is there a motion to create a subcommittee of Vincent and White?
I'm willing to make a motion if they're willing to.
As long as I'm not on it, I'll motion.
wanna
Don't
assign
want
it
it to
to
be
you.
a subcommittee, we'll just work together.
I'll make that
That
motion.
sounds also
Tara.
official, Vincent and White. So, okay, so we will just move on then.
We need to,
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Agenda number 1, Kenzie Salisbury, would you like to speak to this? Because she's passing, okay. Sherry Benson, she's passing as well, okay. All right.
Well, I'll send back some edits.
Okay, number 2, discuss and consider payment of legal invoice from our town attorney. So the town attorney submitted March 25th, a very first invoice, because I don't know if you heard, she wrote off like the previous year of work for our town, which is an extraordinary gift to our town, and we're so grateful. So this invoice is dated March 25th, and she gave us net 60, which means it's due May 25th, so that's why it's on the agenda, because I don't want to be late. And so it is in the amount of $1,800. And if you have a packet, it shows the detail amount. And there were still some items written off, but the balance is $1,800 on this.
So Tara, is this my agenda item or somebody else put this on there?
This is yours.
Okay. So my request was that we review calendar year-to-date legal work and expenses along with requester and purpose of the work. And certainly that's accomplished for December, but are we saying there's no charges coming for January, February, March, or April?
No, I have them printed right here. So we can pass those out.
So you weren't aware that I received that invoice because we didn't put it on the last agenda. So that we do have this agenda here, and of course, last meeting they weren't here, so I just felt it was important to have them here when we do this. And so I felt like your request was asking kind of in a way, kind of like an audit of them, and I just thought that that was kind of not appropriate for someone who's donated the entire previous year of their services. And so this is very detailed, and so it kind of tells us exactly what is, costing us. And so now we have invoices for the next. So thank you.
Emily, is this an invoice?
No.
I call it a bill. Andy, is it an invoice?
Okay. For the purpose of discuss and consider payment of legal invoice from town attorney, would it be considered an invoice? Is it
Yeah.
something that we can discuss as
Yes.
part of this agenda
Yes.
item?
Yes.
Thank you.
So Tara, just again, so the people in the audience know, we are not allowed to have conversation about any of this outside of this meeting, wherever we're holding it. So it does create some difficulty sometimes in getting our intent across. I wasn't asking for an audit. I was just, as someone like yourself who's been in business, when I haven't seen an invoice from somebody for 4 or 5 months, I start getting nervous because I feel like I've lost track of what might be coming, right? It could be a big surprise bill. And I do appreciate the amount of stuff that they've donated, but I also think it's important, and I'm not just thinking about this council, but there's going to be another council that hopefully I'm not on, and some will celebrate that and some won't. But I want to be comfortable that those people are following rules and procedures like we should be following rules and procedures. So my point in that request was just, gosh, we haven't seen anything from our legal group since last year. Now we've seen one for December, and I appreciate that. And I think this is exactly, if we could just sort of see this each month so we kind of know what's hanging out there. I don't think you guys are going to spring us with a $20,000 or $30,000 bill, but I would like to be able to keep track of what we're doing with legal. I don't consume a lot of legal services myself. I trust the others to do that for us, but I just want to make sure that we understand as a budgetary item kind of how much money we got hanging out there. So thank you for producing this.
And we have tried to streamline things as much as possible. Patricia, back in, I don't even remember what months, decided that we could have a one set time a month that we would talk. And so that has been done. So that's, we have one set hour a month that we have a phone call conference with Emily primarily. And so that has streamlined things. You can imagine when we first started, there was just so many things we had to accomplish. And so that's been streamlined. And then, of course, we did approve that we could actually have Emily come in via, FaceTime. And so, of course, she was sick last month, but then we've got an executive session tonight, so that won't work because that's with the attorney. So, but that is another option. So, we have tried really hard to streamline that and we'll continue to try. And as much as I possibly can, I edit things to try and save them time so that I don't have to call upon them. And now that we have a secretary, that'll really help as well. And not having a secretary has kind of created this weird situation because I'm not allowed to send anything out to the council members all at once. I'm supposed to send it to the secretary, and then she sends it out. That way you don't break Open Meetings Act. So I've had to contact them to send things out to not break Open Meetings Act. So it is disadvantaged, but now we have Liz, so that should, and she is on secretary at poetrytexas.org now, so we're grateful.
Okay, just for clarity, I just did a real quick look over, and I'll do more in depth, but it looks like December was kind of an average month for us.
2021.
Yeah, 2021, based on hours. There were 1860 billed in December. I didn't run the total on the others, but it looks like month over month we're exceeding our 1,800 budget.
You are right now. That's accurate.
So we also are exceeding the amount of revenue from Encore and FEC Electric that we anticipated, so.
I'm not saying we can't pay for it. I'm saying if we're going to have a budget, we need to make sure that it's we knew our first budget was a swag. It's scientific, wild-ass guess.
Yes.
And so that's what we're going on. So we just need to make sure when we're budgeting in the future, we're budgeting based on real numbers. So that's
Right.
why I wanted to ask that question.
No, right.
Well, and that's the other point I was trying to make, and thinking about this is how are we going to do a decent job of projecting for next year if we don't know what our run rate is this year?
Right.
So,
Right.
so good news, Brian. The bill dropped down to 1,800 exactly.
Yeah, they were very generous. They were very generous, and I appreciate it.
God showed up, and a miracle happened. I just wonder if the miracle is going to happen every single month.
I
And
would.
so Patricia's promised you guys through the bill I just gave you, each month with those are going to be written down to 18. So whatever it
Perfect.
says.
It fits.
Okay, but we do have to work on a plan moving forward to
Yes.
get you guys closer to 18 every month. And
As in,
so-
it's really 18 consumed
Closer,
versus
yeah.
18
Or
eating
our
3,000
new,
in bank.
our new budget starts this summer.
October? Or what's your,
Well, our fiscal year is end of September.
September.
So we have to back it up. So this summer,
Yeah.
we have to come up with a new budget. So we have to take all that into consideration. And now that because it was pie in the sky, we didn't really know. And now we have kind of some figures to work from.
yeah. And then we can
Mm-hmm.
discuss specifics about how we're going to keep it lower now that everybody's got all the information. So
Okay,
anyway.
okay.
Well,
thank you.
so how do we do that? Because again, we can't just all meet up at your house and talk about it. So somebody's going to need to pour through this and figure out what the trends are, right? What's eating
Well,
up our hours?
yes,
and
I
not
agree.
necessarily who, but what. I mean, is it rough cutting ordinances? Are there
So-
things we can take on?
Exactly. So getting the secretary is going to help a lot. She's going to take a lot of stuff I'm doing, checking things away from me and proofreading and all of
Yeah,
that.
because she's way cheaper.
She is way cheaper.
Way cheaper.
And then, and Andy and I discussed some other ideas, which could maybe be we come to a certain amount of meetings per year in person, and the other ones are only virtual, or maybe only executive session and not coming through the whole session, so you're not paying for travel. And me being here through items you don't necessarily need me to be here for.
Well, we've already dropped it down. I mean, when we started this, we were talking about Patricia, who bills at a higher rate, right?
I am cheaper than Patricia.
And so now
Yeah.
we've moved down to you, which in
Yes.
theory gives us the same expertise, but at a cheaper rate. And then
Yes.
sometimes you use people that are cheaper than you, right?
Yeah.
We're getting the janitor and others involved. So. But I think I would like to see us, Tara, commit to a workshop item maybe at the next month's meeting where we can have an open discussion, and that'll give us some time to look through this.
It's a
And
lot
let's
to
have a little-
digest. Yeah, no, that's a good idea.
And we'll send you a copy that shows each month written to 1,800. Patricia's out with some family matters, and so I just wanted to get you something you could
Yeah, I'm
truly
just
look
looking
at,
more
but-
for
Well,
patterns and things.
yeah.
What-
just to, okay, so our new deputy secretary is very adept at like contracts and different, she's been in finance and mortgage finance. And so she's a very adept at contracts, so that may help quite a bit. And so that'll be just priceless, I think, for us. And so part of the problem is when you're dealing with all of this legal is unless we can still, borrow it from another town that has already done something very identical, we're having to recreate that. And so, and sometimes we can do that, and I've certainly tried and spent dozens of hours trying to do that, and then
Yeah.
sometimes it just doesn't work. So, but just having a secretary is definitely going to make a difference on that.
So does anybody else on the council have an issue with doing a workshop at the beginning of next month's meeting and including this as one of the items? Tom?
I'm sorry, Mike.
Are you okay with adding this as a workshop item to next month so we sort of talk about the pattern with legal expenses and how we curtail them to our budget
Look, I have
number?
to say, this echo in here, I can hardly hear.
Yeah, there is
Because
quite an
it
echo.
echoes around the room, and so I can, unless speak slowly and clearly, I can't hear what you're saying at that end of the table.
Okay, so,
including Emily.
so I called for this item to be put on the agenda because we hadn't seen an invoice or accounting for a long time. Okay, she just handed us out a detailed description of all of our legal work.
Mike, can you back away? There.
And so I'm just asking, are you okay, and the other council members, with adding a workshop item? We are incurring, approaching double our budgeted number in legal expenses each month. They're writing it down to our budget number, but they're not going to do that forever. We need to get our consumption of legal services down to what we've budgeted, and so I would like us to have a conversation as a council in a workshop forum as to how we do that. Can we start drafting more of our own ordinances initially and some other things that will take work off of them?
Okay, thanks. I understood what you just now said. When you're talking like that, I can't
Okay.
hear anything. Same tar with you. When you're talking like that, I can't hear anything. But anyway,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I agree with you, Mike.
Okay.
Okay, so that's our first workshop item for next month.
We still need to open that up to the public.
Yes. Okay, so Kinsey Salisbury?
Okay, so to make sure that I understand this correctly, this is December's invoice that was invoiced in March. Okay. So the one that you just passed out to everyone else, that's January, February, March, and April's?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Since this is the only time that we're able to talk about this, it's going to be submitted like how our financial report is online to where we can see this every single month?
No, so there could be attorney-client privilege in here, so really, it's never going to be included in the public to look at our bill.
But they'll see the dollar amount.
Yes.
You'll see
Okay.
the dollar
So
amount
we'll see the
for
dollar
legal.
amount though on there, on the
Yeah, you won't see
financial
the
report?
detail because it could have been something super secret that you can't read.
Okay, so the one that we received in December is not due until May. When are these other ones due?
It'll be due net 60 of once I get you guys the version that shows everything written off.
Okay, and is that going to be
So-
1 month, we have to pay for all of those? Or like, is it going to be staggered, like how the months were
We
staggered?
will work with you guys on how you can get it paid.
Yeah, we're going to need the payment plan.
Kinsey, real quick, could you state your address?
20571 North Highway 34.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Shelley Smith? Sherry Benson? Okay. Okay, so we're going to move that to a workshop for next month.
Well, we still have the approving the December invoice. I mean, it's due, so we
Yes,
probably need to take
we
action on
do. I don't have you on my sheet. It's,
On the original sheet, I have Kinsey Salisbury and, yeah, that's it.
we have Kinsey, Shelley, and Sherry Benson for number 2.
it. Shelley Smith?
Okay. Shelley passed and then Sherry passed, so.
Oh, I apologize, I didn't realize you were
Okay, Patrick, go ahead.
Come on up.
Patrick Smith, come on up.
Give us your address in case we want to visit you.
Patrick Smith, 18730 1565. Like most of the citizens, based on what we've been able to see and hear tonight, we really don't have a clue as to any of the details of what has been discussed. But to try to flesh out the issue, I'm going to ask you, and let me back up. I do not want you to reveal to me any attorney-client privileged information. I don't want you to reveal to me any work product privilege information, okay? But without going into any privileged information, can you give the citizens just a general overview of how your law firm would prepare and submit a bill for work that it does on a matter like it does for the town of Poetry?
So Patricia's the one who is overseeing these bills. She's had a lot of family matters, and that's why this bill is late. Typically, they would go out 60 days after, 30 to 60 after a month's completed, once every partner's reviewed all the submissions, made any deductions they need to. Then our timekeeper reviews them, finalizes them, and then they go out.
Okay, so once your firm is retained by a town like Poetry, the normal practice is whoever the attorneys are that work on the file, they keep track of their hours, they enter them into a computer billing system, and then a bill is prepared, even if they decide to say, we're going to write off what you owe us. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. And has that been true for the last year, to the best of your knowledge?
Has what been true? That
That
bills
there
have
would
been
be
created?
these billing records for a 30 or 60-day
Yes.
9 period?
The
Okay.
town has them, yes.
And to your knowledge, were all of those sent to the town of Poetry?
They have them at this
Okay.
point, yes.
And so, to the best of your knowledge, someone at the town of Poetry has had possession of those bills since the time your firm was retained?
No, I just gave them the other half of the bills just now.
Okay, and I appreciate that clarification, but I'm going back, if I understood what Councilman Jaffe said, he's not seen every billing record for every month, have you? Okay, so those should be somewhere, correct?
So Tara, the one that Patricia sent over for all of 2021 should have each month. So you guys should have that one. Is that not what was sent to you?
I think I remember seeing one last year that was sort of a roll-up of everything to that point.
Okay.
But other than that, this is the only other one I've ever seen.
Shows several months at
But
once.
just-
And
And
my
I've never
understanding-
seen a detailed accounting of what the number was built up of, so.
For 2021, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't remember seeing one for the roll-up of 2021 and until now. This, I don't know, I don't want to distract you.
Okay, and just to kind of cut to the chase, if for some reason they've gotten lost or misfiled at the town of Poetry, your law firm in the ordinary course of business would keep those records, and you could produce another copy if you
Yes.
wanted to.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Patrick.
Okay. So is there a motion to pay this bill? We want to pay our bills?
I'll move to approve the invoice for December.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion to pay the $1,800 invoice for December, due May 25th. That's been made by Fowler, seconded by White. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Okay. Number 3, discuss and determine the definition of resident for the town of Poetry. We had this on our agenda previously, so we mainly discussed it last month. We did put something in the Poetry Post regarding that. In the Post, I think I got like one physical response and then a few emails, and that was it. Not a lot of turnout on please give your input on the Post. So we have 3 different definitions that were put out in the newsletter. Number 1, a resident is someone whose primary domicile is in the geographical boundary of the town of Poetry. Or number 2, a resident is someone whose driveway of their primary domicile crosses over any part of the geographical boundaries. Or 3, a resident is someone whose primary domicile has any part of contiguous property in the town's geographical boundaries. Number 3 is the definition that each election division for each county used on the last 2 elections. So after consulting Tandy Smith and Jeannie Ash, that was their definition. That's also, from my understanding, that definition that Encore Electric and FEC Electric use for their franchise fees. So just so you know.
So just to clarify, number 3, any piece of their property where their main domicile is located.
That is contiguous.
That is contiguous.
So that
'Cause
means.
I've always used the word contiguous.
Say it again, Terry.
So number 3, reviewing number 3, was any piece of their property that's contiguous on their primary domicile. So if your house But number 3 is saying if your house is 1,000 foot off the road, but your contiguous property touches the city, and you said that that's what was used for incorporation, but that's not accurate.
No, I didn't say it for incorporation. What I said in the last 2 elections. Now, incorporation,
Okay, so not incorporation.
for the incorporation vote, the attorney had the very strict definition of you had to be within the first 311, 411, or 511
So
feet.
would align with number 1 more.
It was number 1's definition. Now, the subsequent 2 elections, okay, the election for the sales and use tax and for the one before that for the council, you voted for this council, then those 2, each election division used number 3 with the caveat that they had to be over 18, couldn't be a felon,
Be a legal voter.
they had to be a registered voter, and also with the added definition that they got to choose where their domicile was. So if they lived in Dallas and they vote in Dallas, but they have a home here that they spend the weekends on, they can't vote in both places. Okay, they get to vote in one place. So they tell Hunt or Kaufman County elections directors, divisions, what they're declaring as their primary residence.
So Tara, you mentioned, I think I heard you say FEC and Encore. So what definition are they using to collect their franchise taxes?
My understanding is number 3. They're using the number 3.
Did we direct them to use number 3, or what?
That's
I mean,
just
how
what
did they figured?
use. And I don't know. Now, they do consult the Secretary of State, and each election divisions consulted the Secretary of State on that ruling. Since we were a brand new town, they did consult.
For FEC and Encore?
That's my understanding. Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't just see that we incorporated and arbitrarily pull up a map. They had to have started from something.
Well, I mean, they did ask for a map. We sent them the map, and they had the surveyor's map. And so,
So did we give them any direction along? Because that
No.
never came through the council. Do we give any direction on what to do with the map, or they just
no,
do
they
their
just
own?
asked for the map. I gave them the map, and then they just decided what they were doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, to me, and I think we need to discuss this until we come up with an answer. We've been sitting here a year, and we still aren't agreed on what a resident is and isn't for different purposes. In my mind, the most inclusive definition should be for voting, right? If any piece of your property touches the town, you should have the right to vote. But I think you brought this up, Emily, we can have different definitions of residency for taxation, for ordinance, for trash collection fees and other things. But I think voting, to make sure that people are represented, if any piece of my land touches the town, I should have the right to vote on matters of the town. Whether the ordinances apply to me may be less inclusive, depending on whether half of my house is in or all of my house is in or other things.
So you're generally right. In terms of the solid waste, that ordinance was written to apply in your ETJ, and so the issue's coming up in terms of solid waste vendors. And so when we decide that get this definition squared away, those people are still going to be in your ETJ, and our ordinance applies to the ETJ. So I think part of this is realizing which ordinances are going to apply to your ETJ and which cannot. And so solid waste, yes.
Oh,
Okay.
well, I think that's new information to me. Has anybody else heard that before, that the ETJ is obligated to trash ordinance?
It's one of the health and safety ordinances.
It's the
that a
health
town
and,
can
right.
But
No,
it
I've
just
heard
says
that.
we have to provide for a means of trash collection, not that they have to use the city's. We just have to make sure they're getting rid of trash legally.
Okay, so the way Patricia handled that one, that was before Emily's time, Patricia said that if any part, that she had this definition for trash, for solid waste, if any part of their property was in the town, then they would be, the ordinance for solid waste would apply to them.
And that's in the franchise ordinance?
That is in the ordinance.
That's in the ordinance.
It's written that it applies to your ETJ, so that encompasses touching the town, because you're not in the ETJ if you don't touch.
Now, that's not someone like just.
That's what I want to be clear. We're going to
Yeah,
have
and
people
that's not, no, that's not
number
someone
3.
who's just way outside. It has to be this definition. They have to have at least some part of their property within the town border. It's not just all the ETJ.
Right, but to me, what I heard was it
It could
applies
be
to
written
ETJ.
that
It
way.
doesn't apply to ETJ. It applies to people who may be partially in the ETJ,
Yes.
but at least some small component of their continuous property touches the city limit.
And that is what Patricia said for months.
Right, but then Emily, you said on a phone call we had you on in here one night that you didn't, Terry, I think you brought the question up, and Emily said, wait a minute, I'm not sure I agree with that just because their driveway touches.
And that's where the memo came with all the case law. So Patricia's experience, which was driveways in the town she's worked with, and we did the memo to show you some courts hold its domicile, some say driveway, some say if any part touches. And that's why it's up to you guys to pick which one. It's not up to us. We just got to tell you what case law says.
So I'll review that, but if we decide tonight that a resident, which I don't think we're prepared, but if we
No.
decided tonight a resident, let's use number one, for instance, that their domicile, their physical domicile has to touch the city limits, would that exclude everybody in that document then, because they're no longer a resident?
I think our ordinance is written that it applies to ETJ. So that specific ordinance, it wouldn't change anything.
So this is about voting. This is about who gets to
Yeah,
vote
and
in the
voting,
elections.
I don't mean to confuse trash with voting.
Yeah,
So
I think
for
they're
voting, I
separate.
think, so, and I don't mean to cut you off, Councilman White. I do think it's important to
It is.
what county, whatever, if most people are saying any part, the all-inclusive definition, it behooves you guys to use the same one. Otherwise, we're up against counties saying, we think this, your attorney thinks this. So in terms of voting, I think you've faced a lot less problems with going at that all-inclusive definition.
I
That's all I
agree.
wanted
I
to say.
agree
Sorry,
with that.
Councilman White.
And I think that's common sense anyways. I mean, haven't there been enough people unsatisfied with the incorporation election for us to realize that we want to include them? I mean, I don't want to disinclude anybody. They have a right to vote for land that could possibly be taxed, and I think that's what you were saying, to your point, Mr. Jaffe. So,
I would
mean,
definitely like to pin this down tonight. I think we've waited long enough, and I believe the most inclusive definition is what we would go for. Now, with that said, after talking with the Texas Comptroller, for those of you who might be wondering, the 2% sales and use tax only applies to those businesses who are within the hard boundary. That is their ruling. We don't have.
But what does that mean? So that means their building is inside
Their building must be inside the town proper, or the town border.
So it's not where they take orders, it's where their physical warehouse fabrication.
Well, we didn't cut the details quite like that, but she said, in fact, she said that they have businesses where they've had to do an on-site visit, and they actually, one would be in one county and one would be in the other. They actually split registers. So one set of registers would be that all that sales tax would be going to one county, and the other registers would go. So it gets very detailed.
So Simeon, are any of your buildings in the town limit?
For royalty soaps?
Yeah.
No, none of them are.
Okay,
They're
so in
actually
Simeon's
just in
case, he
ETJ.
should not be forced to collect that tax.
That is my understanding.
Okay.
Okay, so how about the Springs, where one building is in, one building is out?
The one that is out would not be subject to that.
So any income they gather on that building is not taxable, subject to our sales
That
tax.
is according to what she told me.
Just to be clear, and Tara, with your speaking that close, I can't hear you.
Okay, I'll
It'd
try
be
and do
better if
better.
it was further away. Okay, but to be clear on number 3, I think I understand what it is, and it affects the voting. Does it also affect trash collection, any kind of
trash?
franchise fee? Does it include anything? Say the house is, Terry said, is 1,000 feet back, but the property touches what we consider poetry, then that they would still be subject to the trash collection,
So
voting,
trash is
everything, correct?
The trash franchise is its own body of law.
And
and
if you
case
could
law.
do the same, if you could
Okay,
hold
I'm
it
sorry.
further back, it's better.
Um,
I apologize, I
No,
got hearing
I know,
aids,
I'm
and this
sorry.
comes out like talking through the end of a pipe.
I know.
So that memo was really discussing trash, and that's its own body of law and case law. And so The answer is that it depends on what state law says for each certain thing. And so state law already gives us a list of what applies on our ETJ, regardless of if we say somebody's a resident in terms of trash, because trash is different. We're trying to pick driveway, domicile, or anything, and we're talking about voting and trash in that memo. So if you're talking about any ordinance, it depends on what state law says. I can't say that a blanket yes or no
So
answer.
then, that means the only thing we're talking about here is voting.
In trash.
Okay.
Emily, legal counsel or your other partner, resident is such a broad term.
It
If
is.
we nail down a resident tonight as someone whose property touches, either way, we'll go either way with it. In future councils, anything that's applied to residents, they're not going to have the back knowledge to say, well, that was just for voting. Am I not correct by that broad term of resident? Do we need to be defining what a legal voter in Portree is as opposed to a resident?
Yeah, I think we need to put a context to each of the
Resident
definition
in
pieces,
terms of
right?
which items. So there should be a policy coming back to you guys. I think we had emailed maybe Councilmember Vincent about that. So once you decide, something will be papered up like we're doing with these ordinances once we discuss them, and it will say the term resident regarding voting and solid waste franchise enforcement means, and then we'll list what our definition is.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Do other towns go through this?
Sorry, what?
Do other towns go through this?
No.
If they've
What,
been
what
in
makes us so
It's the,
special?
We're
the map
311
of how-
feet wide.
Yeah, it's really that bottom part of the map where you're going down the road where it cuts all these properties either not even in half, sometimes in really weird spots, and just when other towns incorporate, they don't necessarily have those issues, and so they don't.
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
know
I
they do
shared
all this.
last month with council that the attorney for Greenville and Hunt County said they don't run into this because they just make sure they take in the guy's whole land. I mean, they just grab the house, the barn, and
Well, I just
all the
saw-
boundaries, so.
I just saw the town of Cottonwood is kind of an H, and
Are
they
they?
did something, yeah, in Kaufman County, so.
They
yeah,
might be in the same.
They might be in the same predicament. And
Wish them luck.
Yeah. So, okay, so we have some citizens. Evie Anderson.
Evie Anderson. I live on 2434, 10194. This is very confusing. And I know it stems, in my opinion, from the way our map is like a bunch of pickup sticks that have just been kind of dropped. And maybe I am too simple-minded, but it seems to me like if a person's property touches what is the town of Portree, that little stick going down the road, that they should be a resident. That's just my opinion. And I think that if they're a resident, then they should get to vote, and they should follow the ordinances, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, you're either a resident or you're not. I think we're going to get really confusing if we start defining, you know, okay, you're a resident, but you don't have to do this, or you have to do that, or it's just very, very, very confusing. Now, I don't see much difference, well, yes, I do, between if your driveway touches the road that is Portree, and if your land touches. I do see a difference there. I think if the land touches, it seems to be, again, simpler. I have some property that's near us, and the land touches Portree, but the driveway is on a side road. So if I were to ever move on that land, I guess I'd be out of Portree, you know. So it's just beside me that we're having to deal with this. Our city is strangely put together, in my opinion, and it makes it extremely hard for us to know. It doesn't even have a shape. It doesn't have a shape. Someone was asking, do other towns have this problem? No. You know, they're either a rectangle, a square, or a flower, or something. So, you know, I commend y'all for having to deal with this. I really do.
Thank you, Evie. So in Kaufman, there actually are 3 other cities that actually, I'm trying to not.
He's got headphones on. I think he can hear now.
Oh, okay. So
Josh.
Is that better?
Yeah,
can
he
you
can
hear
hear
me?
us now.
Okay, so in Kaufman County alone, there are cities that have just a strip, or as in Cottonwood, it's an H, so it's not unheard of, and even the comptroller said it's not unheard of, they knew. But yes, it is unique. I know that was something the way back in 1984 that Mr. Bankson had set forth, and because of our state guidelines, it kind of forced us into some of that. So, but yes, it does have some challenges. So thank you. All
Well,
right.
and two, Evie, just, you know, the point is not whether you get to call yourself a poetarian or not. That's not the issue. The issue is the applicability, your ability to vote on items relating to the town, and the applicability of rules and regulations and ordinances, right? We just need to know, and I think Trash sort of highlighted this in an unfortunate way, but, you know, there was also some lingering concern over the original incorporation vote and the election vote and all that. We just want to settle this down so that we can quit talking about it.
If you can vote, then you're a resident of Fort Tree, and everything should apply to you one way or the other.
Yeah.
I agree with that, actually. Okay, Chad West.
Chad West, 19370 FM 986. I guess, how does this apply to Kaufman County? Because I used to know what contiguous property was, but I know some of you are in Hunt County, and Kaufman has went out and broken every bit of our property into multiple property IDs. So if it's in the town, it has a property ID, and then anything outside the town has a property ID. And to me, that would lend the argument of, depending on where your home is on each one of those sections, the argument would be is or is not no longer a contiguous property. Hopefully that makes sense.
I can answer that. I was actually asked that very question. So if because we have properties that do that very thing too. We have the same thing in Kaufman, and they said, no, that doesn't make a difference. In fact, it can be separated by a road. And I'm like, well, how does that work? And I just still didn't understand how it could be separated by a road and still be contiguous. But I guess it has different definitions. I'm not sure. I'm just not sure of that.
Well,
But
my understanding is Kaufman did that in anticipation of us passing other than a zero property tax, and that tax will be levied only on that parcel. I spoke to Hunt County about it, and they said they have no intention of reissuing parcels. They're just going to do the math on the fly, I guess. But
That's good. Well, I mean, the tax implications is a whole other conversation based off what Kaufman County's doing and the value that they put within the town and without to the town. But I guess on what basis, when statute, do they make that determination of what is in the town and what is not in the town?
I would say anything that you own and it touches another piece of property that you own would be contiguous. Because if you continue to grow your ranch and they're touching, they would be considered contiguous. And that's how some people are going to eventually get into the city, by purchasing property that would touch their domicile. And that goes back, she's talking about the voter rolls and stuff. You know, if you live in Dallas and you're buying ranches up here, you don't get a vote even though you have contiguous properties. But I think if we have to define it, I think we can have council define it. But if it touches your property, then you contiguously own properties.
And I don't disagree. I just think that it needs to be clarified based off of
I would be okay with clarifying
It was in
the issues that Kaufman County caused.
the mock-up ordinance that myself and Councilman Vincent looked over did include that. And the wording that I liked and the inclusion that I liked included anybody that had property that was adjacent to each other, even different parcels, as long as they were managing it the same way. So, treating it as one piece of property, more or less. So that would include anybody there or anybody that's adding to their ranch and has their house, on the second piece back. As long as they're managing their property as one, then it's included.
See, I do have a question.
Okay, Kenzie Sal.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, if, understand that there was density requirements that we had to meet. If we went to number 3, is that put us outside the density requirements to be a type A city?
No, it actually increase it. It actually increase it.
Well, it gives more acreage, and you might add houses, but it's adding acreage, so the divisor makes it bigger.
Well, there's two separate issues there. One, the boundary line is the boundary line. Our definition of resident doesn't change the boundary line.
Oh, okay. Is that correct, Emily?
She's right. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so Kenzie Salisbury, she's passing. Okay. Lori Giard. And Lori, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, my name is Lori Giard, and I live at 17081 County Road 2450. I haven't lived here for very long, and sometimes I'm told I live in Poetry, and sometimes I don't live in Poetry, but I live across the street from Chad, so I'm pretty sure I live in Poetry. Okay, so that's one thing that I find extremely frustrating too, is that little whatever H thing and with all the little legs, and I don't understand why you couldn't just make a big circle but it seemed like you were just grabbing here and grabbing there. But I agree, it's like if you're in Poetry, if any part of your property is in Poetry, you should be, whatever you want to call it, Poetry citizen.
Okay.
Resident, period. That's just how I see it, okay? Because, I live on 1565. How much more of a citizen, a resident of Poetry can you get? I could walk home from here. Your whole meeting here I can see this church from my house, okay? We're residents. We wouldn't be here if we didn't care about the city. I mean, I may not have been here as long as most of you, but I care about the city, okay? I don't care what I see on Facebook, and I don't care about what most people say, but I still care about the city, and I'd like it to stay the way it was when I moved here, okay?
Do you mind me asking when you moved here?
I said it. I don't care what I see on Facebook, but I
said-
care about the city.
Do you mind if I ask when you moved to Poetry?
Huh?
Do you mind if I ask when you moved to
Oh,
Poetry?
the December before all the crap started happening. Okay?
Welcome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lori, thank you so much, and we appreciate your input. Thank you. Did you bring it? I don't know. Shelley Smith. Shelley Smith, passing. Sherry Vinson? Oh, is Patrick after Shelley or before? No, after. Okay. Okay. I apologize.
Liz, could you check to see if he's registered for any other questions to make sure that he's... Thank you.
Do I need to say my name and
Yes,
address
please, for
again?
the recording.
Okay. Patrick Smith, 18730, 1565.
Thank you.
Thank you. How's that? All right.
Good.
Oh, it's still okay with you?
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Trying to walk a tightrope. So, in looking at the draft that Councilman Vinson was kind enough to provide to me last time, part of the residency requirements talk about your domicile. Then other provisions talk about a single tract of land. Then it talks about an adjoining tract of land. And then finally it talks about a contiguous tract of land. To me, this is very vague and subject to multiple interpretations. And I noted that the mayor said that she was frustrated. She wanted to pin this down tonight. But I got to tell you, the citizens in this room, based on what information they've been provided, they don't know what's the result of this. They don't know who's a resident and who's not a resident. And I can just tell you, talking to my neighbors and people around town, they felt like there was a rush to get the incorporation done, and there was a rush to get the votes done. And as a result of that, we had an election where some people were told you can't vote, other people were told you could vote. Then we have another election, same thing. I would ask the council tonight, let's get it right this time. Do not be in a rush. Let's get the thing right. And here's the question I would pose to whoever wants to answer it. Depending on your 3 definitions of who's a legal resident, how does that affect your right to vote, your responsibility for property taxes, your responsibility for franchise taxes, your responsibility for sales taxes? Can anybody tell me that definitively tonight?
That's what we said we still have to discuss.
Pardon?
That's what we said we still have to discuss.
Right, but we don't have an answer to any of that tonight, do we?
Exactly. So
Not all of it.
I would not anticipate that we're going to put a pin in it tonight.
Okay, and hopefully before I get cut off, I, like many of our fellow citizens that live in Kaufman County, found out that I now own 8 tracts of land in Kaufman County. And my question is, and I'm hoping some of you are Kaufman County residents and you're familiar with it, how does the county now draw on different lines on the map and sending us different property tax bills, how does that play into domicile, single tract, adjoining tract, contiguous tract?
It doesn't at all.
It doesn't at all.
No, they follow the boundary line. So the boundary line is a separate issue than our definition of resident. They just
Okay,
follow
so
the map.
Then I'll be as quick as I can. On number 2.
I'm sorry, that is your time.
Okay, so you don't have the discretion. Let me follow up on that last question.
So I don't want to be unfair to our other people. We each get 3 minutes.
Okay, all right. I'm
So
good.
maybe you can discuss it at the general comments. Okay, Sherry Vinson, you're passing. And Dale Bryant. He's passing, okay. All right, so
Is that all the public comment?
that is all the public comments. So some very good comments have been made. Thank you.
So, Emily, can I ask a clarification question? So I think the life lesson I'm learning out of this experience, not just tonight, but in general, is in the future, when we write an ordinance, it feels like we should be very clear in the ordinance who is impacted by the ordinance, period.
Yes.
So to somebody's point, just because we come up with a definition for the term resident does not naturally settle all the debate going forward about does this apply to me or not apply to me. So I think we should probably dig up the trash franchise thing and go back and add some more words that say, and this will be applied to the following kinds of citizens.
Yeah, we can do that.
Touching the road, not touching the road, building in, building out, whatever, just so that it makes it very clear.
Yep, we can do that.
I agree, but we have to get our categories defined, and then we can go back and make sure that the ordinance are written so that it applies to those categories.
Yeah, because I think as somebody pointed out, that the loose term resident could be misapplied later or misrepresented, and we don't want that. So every time we pass something that has that kind of impact, cost, or legal or otherwise, it seems like we should probably put in there, this is, I mean, in criminal law, that's how it is, right? It puts in the consequences and who it applies to and all that. So.
Yeah, we can be more specific than just saying town limits. And a lot of templates are written that way just because other towns don't have this issue. So with you guys, we do need to be very careful about our applicability sections in your ordinances.
Yeah, that's my internal conflict, Mike. I'm for number 3. I want to call as many people as I can a portrayarian, whatever that was coined by Alida. But my inner struggle is that which I think we can correct. I don't want to charge those people outside that didn't get a vote to get inside initially.
Right, so
So if
again,
I want to call somebody a poetry resident inside that bubble, and that's what we elect to do, or align with these rules, that's fine. But I think we have to go back and revisit some of those other franchise that I don't think I was aware that that's the intent of those franchise agreements.
That's what I want to take a look at too, and I want whatever we're doing here to be extremely specific, that this is about voting, voting, voting. And I also want to actually see something in paper that says it, because we're talking here about ideas, but we need something, that actually proves it out, something that we can hand out to people to let them see what we're actually talking about and some options. So I would want to get Emily to draft us a copy if we're all in agreement with number 3, as we hopefully are, as we've heard people come up here, and I hope nobody wants to exclude the people that have come up here and the people that have complained about not being able to vote for their community in the initial incorporation election, so that we can get Emily to actually give us something that we can give to the community and take a look at, discuss, and fix in this next meeting.
So in order to save on legal costs, what we talked about, I feel like we need to have a subcommittee maybe, and that way they come up with the general thoughts. And I think we already had that in Benson and White, tried to do that, but I think with the discussion we've had tonight, there's more detail that needs to go into that process. So, and then of course you can send that to the secretary perhaps and help the way she can help formulate some of that, and she's very adept at contracts, and maybe we can flesh that out ahead of giving it to Emily. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to give her
Can the subcommittee
something
send
to
it
start
to the secretary, and the secretary send it out to everybody for review, but not for commenting?
Yes.
I would like that a lot better.
That would be most welcomed, because it's been awkward, very awkward.
Yeah, I know. It's been hard without a secretary to get
Very
information out. So.
And I have a question, because I've been hit personally with this question this week, and others have too, is that people are saying who are in ETJ have been told by Progressive Waste, that they are in the city and they are affected by the trash collection. Now, my question is, the people who are affected by the trash collection are not affected in any way if we went to number 3. It's still the same as what it was prior to today.
As the ordinance is currently written, yeah.
Okay, so we're not sure where this came from Progressive Waste, where they've been told or telling people you're part of the city and therefore we can't deal with you. That's not correct. Am I speaking correctly?
We do have an executive session to discuss some of this, so
that's
we
more
might
detailed.
want to save some of
Okay.
that for that.
So,
Okay, well, I just have to say, then in this case, I like number 3 also.
So
Now that it's clear.
Okay, so I think our council, and from what I've heard from citizens, they're leaning toward number 3 with the fact that we need to kind of flesh out the details. Is that what I'm hearing? The details of what affects whom, which ordinances affect whom. So I think that since council said that we could have, and I don't want to just volunteer you again, but
Because I'm not going to jump
you're
up
not-
on that one again.
You're not going to jump on that one again? Is there another council member, White? Councilmember
Jaffe.
White, are
I'll
you?
jump on it.
Okay, so
You wanna-
Councilmember
Simi,
Jaffe
you wanna
and
work?
Simi and White, and then you can email Secretary.
Yeah, let
Poetry
Simeon and I
Texas.
work on
Okay.
something. We'll come up with a straw man. We'll bounce it off to Emily, as long as
Or,
it doesn't
well,
break
if you
any
could send it
laws.
to the secretary, and then that way, and then she can send it out to the rest of you.
Right, but we may
Yeah.
need to go in iteration before we
That's
publish
fine.
something, so
Yeah.
we don't
Okay.
confuse people,
Yeah.
to make sure it's legal. But
Okay.
yeah, we'll work. Now, can we also, because it's related to this topic, can we put on the workshop for next month also to relook at the trash thing? I don't want to get into the details of it, but to incorporate a better definition of resident or whatever we want to call it?
We'll
For
talk
franchise.
about that in the executive
Okay.
session, I think, because it has nothing to do with what we're doing now.
Well, just because I think I'm not worried about that debate as much as I am, I want to go
Okay.
back and correct what I think in hindsight was an oversight on our part, that we weren't like super specific on this impacts the following people, specifically. And so I think we would be correcting something we oversaw or oversight.
And we have an item where you can take action on any matters we discuss in there, so we can come out and take
Okay.
whatever action you need to after then, too.
Okay.
Okay, so let's take a 5-minute break, 5-minute recess.
Yeah, much better. Terry, you see what you got to look forward to? It gets worse. Hey.
Okay, that 5 minutes went fast. Okay, Secretary Liz, do we have the sheet? As promised, the item of ordinance approving no through truck routes within the town was moved to after the break to allow citizens to sign up to speak. So as soon as you have that ready, Liz. Okay, so we have two signed up to speak, Kinsey Salisbury, and she's going to go ahead and pass. Sherry Vinson.
She stepped outside.
Oh, okay. Now, this is item B. We moved it to B.
Oh, you already moved it
To B, yeah, because it wasn't on the agenda, so we didn't want to confuse things by calling it
Okay.
a number.
Then item B is Lori.
Lori Giard? Yes, ma'am. You've got 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Lori Giard. I live at 10781 County Road 2450, and as you know, we have illegal semi-trucks hauling fuel. I was sitting in my living room. I knew that semi-truck was not going to make it. 2 weeks ago, I was coming home from Walmart going, it's amazing that no one has gone through my front fence, okay? Just as we came around, the whole road was closed. Somebody hit one of Chad's relatives. The whole road closed off. They're in my ditch, the whole thing, right? I barely was able to pull into the road. Okay, when you say city of poetry, the sign way down there says City of Poetry starts 7 miles. None of us have the map unless we were fortunate enough to actually have it. When I went online, there was no map for me to look at. Okay, I don't know where the map is that's showing where these signs are going to go. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, rumble strips would be perfect out here. Them semis ain't going to go through this. Okay, my concern is the majority of people consider downtown poetry over there. I have semi-trucks and I'm retired. I know. I don't work. I don't go anywhere. 95% of the time I'm home and I hear them. I know. They also they're starting to use this strip as a drag strip. And it's because we don't have police. I'm not saying that those are priorities. They're not. Those signs aren't going to stop them. At least they would stop the semi-trucks, because one of these times it's not going to be just the truck driver that gets killed. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Lori. Now, we have been in touch with TxDOT. So on 1565, James Axons did come to our last meeting, and he did talk specifically about possibly putting in some rumble strips and then possibly making some signage more clear. So they're looking into that. Now, the time frame, I don't know. So they are looking into that. And then as far as the map goes, there is the map available on poetrytexas.org. And
On where?
poetrytexas.org.
Okay. When I went on earlier to find the time, I couldn't, there wasn't anything attached to the thing I looked at. I don't
Okay.
want the rumble strips personally right in front of my house. I can hear every single car. I don't sleep well. Every single car. I already have to deal with the mountain lion, and I don't care what the game warden Booney says, there is a mountain lion in my yard.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone wants to come get it,
Thank
you're
you,
welcome
Lori.
to.
Just real quick, it was one of Chad's relatives who was hit by a vehicle?
Yeah,
Okay.
his sister-in-law.
Oh, wow.
Was
Well,
hit?
Yes.
Anybody who reaches out to him on a regular basis, please express.
Yeah,
Okay.
she was
Just please
okay.
express our concern. And okay.
Well, and we know that the semi-truck that in December 28th, yeah. The speed limit is 40, but yes. It is a state TxDOT road, so they are kind of in charge of that, and we have reached out to them since December 28th incident, where the semi-truck spilled all the fuel. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And thank you. Okay. Okay, so that ordinance approving the no-through trucks routes within town, what is the council wanting to do with that?
I'd make a motion, we accept it. I like it.
We already made the amendment to allow the purchase of those signs. So, and we'll be consulting authorities on that, of course.
So again, the spirit of this ordinance is that people delivering, independent of the size of their vehicles, to residents of the town can come through.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't want to be a super highway to
Right.
large trucks.
Well, and to that point, the fellow on 2451, he was hauling, he was a large semi, 80,000 pounds. His GPS took him that way. He got stuck for an entire 12 hours, and Kevin went up to him and said, you know, so what made you come this way? And he said, well, my GPS took me this way. And he said, well, if there had been a sign that said no through trucks, would you have changed your mind? He goes, absolutely. So I think it'll be a benefit to not only our citizens, but to these truckers who, you know, they're just following their GPS. But if we have a sign to warn them, because he got stuck for 12 hours, he was down. And it was a very sharp current. And it's a residential area, and it's not meant for these big semis.
But you know, to Lori's point, signs don't necessarily affect behavior, but consequences do. So at some point, we're going to have to get with Sheriff Terry and others to
Well-
come out and actually do some enforcement, because we're
Right.
turning into a speedway around here because they know we're a town and we don't have any legal arm, and they're just playing with
Well,
it.
as Sheriff Terry said, this is our first step. You have to have an ordinance before it can be
Right, but they just need to do
enforced.
basic traffic enforcement. I
Well,
mean, 80
and-
miles an hour is too fast.
But you
on it.
understand, he said that, like, they can't enforce something that doesn't exist. So
Well,
this
there's
is
a
the
speed
first
limit
step.
on 1565, and I challenge you to do 60 through the bottoms and not get rear-ended. You feel like you need one of those barricade trucks behind you to protect you.
All right. All right, so what does the council want to do with this ordinance?
Well, I'll second what you already
Okay,
made.
Tom made a
so I'll
motion.
second.
And White made the second. All those in favor of passing ordinance 2022-5-01? And it looks like that passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. So number 4, is that the right distance? Number 4, discuss TxDOT's willingness to install town-approved entry signs and discuss and consider placement of the signs. We had James Atkins, as I mentioned last time, and he said, you know, just put the flag out and we'll put them up. And so, and that was just on the TxDOT roads. Now we talked about on our CR roads, I think it seemed like we didn't vote on it, but it seemed like the majority of the council was kind of like limited signs, just so we kind of know where we begin, especially since it is a little rather unorthodox design. A little bit of signage could make things a little more clear. But as far as text dot goes, James just said all we have to do is put the flag out and they'll put them in. So we need to discuss.
So they're putting up our little decorative sign, or they're putting up their sign?
If you choose, we can put our sign up, but he didn't say that they would pay for the sign necessarily, but they would be willing to put the sign up.
But they would be willing to pay for the standard green poetry city limit
Right.
sign?
Yeah, I think that's included.
I'd have to get clarification on that.
Okay. Well, without that, I'm hard pressed to vote either way on it.
I think we need to decide the county roads, because obviously we can't tag every county road. I mean, do we do the thoroughfare, the 249 that turns to 2458, and then, is it 2434 you live on, Tom?
Yes.
You know, that's a pretty good thoroughfare, but really, back here at the back of the campground,
Well, so there have been numerous people who've been confused, and so just having a sign at the end, so on 2458, at the end of that, 2460, is that?
yeah,
So
that makes sense.
That would make
60
sense. And then having
68.
2468, having one there, because a lot of folks don't know, okay, where does this end? In fact, I have to look at the map
Well,
every time.
it's the entry point to the Audubon, so that's where we need it.
Yes, that would be, and then that would help law enforcement, it would help our citizens, it would help our waste disposal vendors.
But the intent's not to go in here and tag every one of
No.
these
Well, and
point of
actually,
ends on these county roads, right?
On those county roads, we have the entirety of the road. That wouldn't even make sense to me. Like, why spend the money and time to do that when really, to me, it's meant for clarification.
Okay.
And the only confusing part for myself is I had to pull that map out. Okay, so where is this? So at that 2468 that you mentioned would be, I think that would, do you concur that that would make sense to put one there? And then,
So on 2458, but at that point, right? 2458's the road that continues into Hunt County. So it's 249, then it turns to 2458.
Right, pull that up.
This is 2458, this is 2468.
2468, right.
Yeah.
So just on that, I think Councilmember White said it well last time, that we don't want to litter our place with signs, but signs are helpful. So you know where you are. And so the 2468 would make sense. Is there another suggestion? Maybe at the other end where that ends, and that's at the crossroad.
Well, that's going to be state highway, though. That's going to get a state.
That would be a text dot matter, but we still need to decide.
So the most southeastern.
Where's
border.
2468?
2468 is the last street in Granby Verde.
Okay. Now, just making sure it's not confused with 3486. There's a lot of the same numbers there. But that's, we only have half that road, though. So how do we, no, not 2468, 3486. We only have the southern half of that stretch.
So we say the southern part.
So do we have a sign and an arrow? I mean, that's.
So maybe you just have it on the left-hand side of that road. But that brings up a very good point. Yes.
Now, population signs generally have, the city limit signs generally have a population count on it, right?
Mm-hmm. And that was proposed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, would it not be wise to wait till we know how many residents we have?
Well, we have a minimum that was required by the state, and so we know we have the minimum. And the census actually would be changing anyway. I think they'd come out with more data, so
as
I don't know.
a point of order, so what are we, and let me point out, I just came from the Hunt County Tax Appraisal Office where I was defending my property value going up 110% in 1 year because we're poetry proud. And so is half of California and a bunch of other people moving in here thinking $40,000 an acre is cheap for large acreage. I mean, what are we trying to accomplish with the sign? Is it a boundary definition, or is it a decorative thing, or do we want them to be impressed by our head count, or what are we? I guess I'm struggling with what it is we're trying to accomplish.
Well, it's not decorative in my mind. It's very declarative, though. I get questions all the time, okay, where's the boundary? And so a sign tells us, and we would put it right on that POE.
So why can't we
POV.
just go with a candy bar, just like the state uses, just says poetry? The poetry town.
But that
limit.
doesn't specify where it begins and where it ends, and especially since we are unorthodox in our makeup, I think it would provide some clarification
But
to
I mean,
the
what
trash
else is going to be
vendors.
on the sign that's going to clear that up? Is there going to be arrows pointing different directions, or it's just going to be at the edge of the town entering poetry, right? And so.
And we don't have to have a lot of them, but I think we do need some because there is confusion, and I want to just have clarity over confusion. It is really for clarity.
But the population
And we don't have to put that because that may change. I mean, that would age our signs well, or very quickly if we did put population. So that can be eliminated if we.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're on the same page. I don't think you and I are opposite this. I'm just saying, I think we should at least consider coming out with a very simple sign that says, entering town of poetry or something, put it at each of the entryways that we think are our entryways and leave it at that, and then we can come back in following years and, once we know our population or whatever, I hope we don't want to brag about anything, because again, I think it's already costing us, but, if we're just worried about people getting lost, just entering town of poetry or something would be enough.
Because the sign to Lori's point, the sign that is at like the crossroad of 276, it says 6 miles of poetry, but you don't know where
Right.
does poetry begin. And that actually is ethereal, so until you pull out your map, you don't know exactly. So it'd be nice to have a clarifying point. Okay, this is where poetry begins.
Yeah, well, and honestly, I think that was just a kind gesture by the state when they put that up, because 6 miles didn't take you to the town of poetry.
No.
It just,
Yeah. So possibly at that juncture of 1565, again, that would be TxDOT. So we can have them at 1565.
And where?
Well, it's near
Let's
the
use
Blue
it-
House.
Let's use our survey points. It's easier. So that would be point of beginning H1.
Yeah.
That's a state sign.
entering town of poetry.
Okay, so
That's
how
point of
about, I will write this down.
Yep. POB 1, or POB H1.
Okay.
Point of beginning H1. That's the
Okay,
most northern
guys.
boundary
Of
1565.
Of 1565, okay.
And then.
And why don't we work on all the TxDOT, that's our agenda
Okay.
item. So POB H1 on 1565.
And on the south end, which is 986, it'd be point of entry, K14.
Okay, and that's 986?
Yep.
Okay.
And then on 3486, it'll be point of entry K, I'm getting real close to needing glasses, y'all. K10.
Join the club. All right.
So
Okay.
that should be all the TxDOT
All the
signs
TxDOT ones. Now
that
how
I
about
see.
the CR roads?
So the one we talked about, 2458, 2468 is going to be POB H17.
H17, okay.
And then on
This
the-
map, for your information, is available on the maps at poetrytexas.org.
Thank you.
So if you're wondering, it has a dot, and that gives us a point of reference. So that's.
So Tom's Road, the cut-through road, is going to be POE, point of entry H7.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Well-
then 2400's a cut-through road too. That's all you guys back there, Mike and Sankoviches. That's going to be POE H20.
Okay.
And then we can discuss the campground. That turns into a county road, but at that point, it's still a contiguous. I mean, that's going to be preferential if we state one right here or not.
Okay, what does the council think on that one?
At the campground, that we do a city sign that's a county road sign, that'd be point of beginning K1. If y'all want
Point
to.
of beginning, K1, okay. So that's a total, now, do we want one sign only, or do we want one on each side of the road?
With our budget getting blown up by council, maybe one.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's a total of 7 signs. Thank you, Fowler.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 city signs, or 5 county signs that we would be on the hook for, right?
Okay, I must have missed one. So POB H17, POE H7, POE H20, and POB K1. That's
Oh, you're
4.
right, I missed, this
Okay.
is the state sign. Okay, so 4.
And there's another one?
No, that's state.
Do we need one up here?
That is, it's on there.
Okay.
That's the cut-through
All
road.
right. Well, that would be fairly simple. Do we want one down here?
You're entering the city here to get to that road.
Does council think that we need one at the
We
pipe?
have one there. You mentioned that. K-14.
Okay,
That's
all
a
right.
state one, though.
Okay, so we have 3 TxDOT roads, state roads, and again, they're willing to put those in for us. We might need, so we have 4 others. It's a total of 7 signs.
Where's 20? 20? Right here. This is the cut through that goes to 276.
Oh, yeah, so it's a big, decently big road.
Not that it's decently big, but it's well-traveled, Mike. 2,400? Is it well-traveled back there?
What?
2,400, County Road 2,400, coming off of
It
276.
depends. If it's flooded, it's not. If it ain't flooded,
Now,
if it
I
ain't
live on
flooded,
that
all the
road.
criminals come
Yeah,
to Quinlan that way.
Yeah, of course, you live down that road, but actually, it's impassable right now, and it's been impassable for a number
That's
of.
y'all's coffee. I want to
It
exclude
lowers
it,
the
but-
crime rate.
It does.
That's serious. You think I'm lying?
No,
That's- They come from Quinlan, and you have a lot of daytime robberies when that road is passable. So trust
So
me,
I
when
think
it's
it's
flooded, that's
intentional
good.
that it's not passable right now.
Well, that's a good thing, unless
No,
your house is on fire.
I live on the top of that road, so I'm kind of thankful. Some truth. All right, so
Well, that's y'all's call on that one then.
do you want to put a sign on that road? We're both kind of impacted by that one.
I'm not a big fan of signs, but.
Okay, we'll take it off.
No.
Okay, I don't really care on that one.
I'm still waiting.
Although there was a trash violation, they don't think they realized that they were still in the town.
That's a good point.
And it did,
That's your refund that's on the.
no,
finance
that
report, ain't
was,
it? Is that another one?
no, this was an email I got earlier today.
Okay, so we're talking about,
On 2400, what would be the point on that? Because
It's H20.
I think the
Strike it.
citizen didn't realize, they just didn't realize. And so if we had a sign, it would help them realize. And I don't want any citizen to, have their hands slapped if they don't know. Like, I think we need to do our best to communicate with them if we at all possibly can. And so some people don't have access to internet to get our map. And if we can have a few signs to clarify, I think that would be really good. And that was
hey, Terry, you've
POE.
decorated our town. What do the signs look like?
POE H20. E.
Okay. I'm sorry, what was that?
I was asking Terry what our signs look like. You've put them
Well, I
everywhere.
don't know. I don't know that we've decided that. I'm not for a lot, but, I mean, the citizens have asked us for signs that they're confused about if they're in the city
The
or not.
citizens have asked?
Yeah, we had,
Yes.
Oh, well, we did have a couple at the last meeting stood up, yeah.
Okay, so we have a proposed, and it can change, but if you don't want to put the population on there, we could leave that off. It says Town of Poetry, established 2020, founded 1845, and it has a tractor on top, which I think in one of the meetings we talked about, the tractor symbolizes that we want to keep it rural. That was brought up in one of the meetings.
yeah, but Mike also mentioned putting up.
I think we should,
nuclear waste sign
yeah, we
up
should
there,
modify
so.
a no trespassing sign and just put poetry
Well,
in
that's
small
where we
print.
have-
That would be my idea.
So are we approving the signs, the design of the signs, or the placement of the signs?
Well, can we go ahead and have a motion made for these particular 8 signs, and then the format of the sign? We have just a rendition here of the actual sign. I don't know how and that might be something a little separate. So,
Yeah, I'd make a motion. We
Okay.
accept those with the proviso that we might add them or make some modifications going forward. This
Okay.
isn't set.
okay, so the motion, do we have a second on that?
What's the motion?
The motion is that we accept the signs being put on the 3 TxDOT roads, the 1565, the 986, the 3486, and the county roads of 2458, 2400, what was this one?
I thought 2434 was on the list.
2434, it is.
CR 2434.
Because it is a thoroughfare road, I can tell you.
And what was this one? The H20?
That's going to be 2400.
Oh, that's another one on 2400?
POAG.
Okay, I already got that one. And what is the POVK1?
K1's your state highway. No, that's the city one that starts at the campground.
And that's campground. Campground corner, okay.
So before we pass a motion, do we have citizens?
Yes, so I just want clarification on that. So we have 3 on the TxDOT roads, 1565, 96, 3046, and then CR roads, 2458, 2434, 2400, and the campground one. So that's only 1, 2, 3, 4.
But there was also a question as to, do we put facing different directions, or what was the other issue? How many we put at each point?
1 on, I think because of our budget, we were going to do maybe 1 on each.
Just tell them when they're
one.
entering, and it's a secret when they leave?
Well, would
Just one.
TxDOT put 1 for entering and 1 exiting? So I just think we have a whole lot of information we don't know yet.
Well, what he said is he would do whatever, like he said he would install them wherever we put the flags. That's what he said.
And will they pay for entering and exiting if we put a flag on each side of the road? If we use their generic sign?
I don't know if he clarified that. But if we could just, say that these are the areas that we want to sign, and then I could get that clarification, that we've nailed it down to, is that 7, a total of 7 areas? We could have a motion to put it on these 7 areas, and then have him give us clarification on whether, he did say that he would install them if we put the flags, wherever we put the flags.
But I don't see any reason to have an exit sign, because then you have to add more words. It's just enter. That's what is most important.
In the proposed sign is pretty, it doesn't say entering or exiting. It just says, like most signs, just here you are.
Yeah, Tara, that's why I would say just have it on the entry,
Yeah,
not on the exit.
on the
You're going to be able to drive through Poetry and enter and exit like 10 times going between your neighbor's houses.
So we just have an entry, might be the most straightforward, maybe.
Yes.
I just think if you just want them, if people seem to be getting lost coming to town, so let's just give them a little sign that says you're here.
You're here. Okay, so we have seven roadways that are suggested here. Do we have a motion to approve those
Yes, I
7
made a
roadways?
motion.
Okay, we have a second?
So we're approving only the location of said signs, but not the sign or
Right.
size or anything else.
Right.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with the motion. Do we have citizens?
So Kinsey Salisbury? She's going to pass. Sherry Vinson? She's going to pass. Okay.
And do we also, Terry, want to authorize Tara or someone on the council to go interact with TxDOT to figure out whether they're going to pay for them and under what criteria and all that?
Well, if you give me a solidified list, then I have more to work with when I talk to either Lane. I will have to talk
You
with
have
both
3 people to talk to.
Lane Selman, James Atkins, and who's the other one?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a habit of you having the backing of the council when you go forward on these
Right,
things.
right.
So-
You guys put me to work, so.
Right, so we can
put me to
say,
work.
we authorize, that way when you come back, we're not like, who sent you on that journey? We're like, no,
Thank
we
you.
did. So I
Thank
think
you.
that should be part of it.
Yes.
So the county commissioners for each county?
Maybe, so yeah, as courtesy, absolutely.
Okay, so we have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion by, was that Anderson? We have a motion
Yes.
by Anderson and seconded by Fowler to accept the 7 entry signs, 3 on TxDOT and 4 on the county roads, to clarify our entry points for the town. All those in favor?
It's 7 entry signs, not
7.
7 entry locations, so we're not talking
Well,
about.
sign
which-
locations, we're not doing signs yet. We're
It's
just
sign
doing-
locations, yes. Sign,
Right. we
devil's in the
picked a sign.
details, sign locations, and we have the POEs and POBs for those.
Well, what's your issue? You sound like you're,
I want to know how many signs we have, how much they're going to cost. If it's 7 sign locations, then that means it's 7 signs. If it's a point on the street and we have signs on each side, that's 14 signs.
Okay.
Right now, are we saying where the signs are going to go? Or are we saying how many signs we want to do?
Okay, my understanding is just sign location, and then depending on what TxDOT says, then we'll come back and say,
vote on
is
one or
vote
two,
on
or-
1 or 2 and the actual look of the sign.
Right.
So it's just sign location. So when I can go to them, I can go with them with the council's approval, like he was saying, and say, okay, these are the decided locations. What can we do with this?
Well, because there's always a chance they're going to say, no, that's right at some point. You need to move it down the road a little ways or further in or whatever. So they may true up our list a little bit based on something we don't know.
I don't know about the engineers' POBs and POEs. I think they're pretty exacting, right? Aren't they?
Yeah, I would
So,
think the coordinates are correct,
yeah.
but if that ends up in the middle of a culvert or something, they're not going to let you stab a hole in it.
You have a
so.
point, yes. Okay. So I think the motion on the table is the sign location only, so that I can go forward talking with the needed authorities to then move forward with the actual signs themselves. Okay, so all those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is number 5. Discuss and consider maps submitted by the Freese Thoroughfare Planning Company hired by Kaufman County and consider options regarding town approval of the regional thoroughfare plan. So I got an email, not through Mayor.Tara, I got an email back in February through my Tara Attack and Ag. And it was from this Freese Thoroughfare, but it said Mayor. And so I don't know how they got my email, but anyway, I was invited to a thoroughfare planning, and I think the only way that I got invited was because I'm the mayor of this town. And so I asked Councilmember Anderson to attend with me. Again, we can't have quorum, so it can only be myself and one other, maybe two. So Councilmember Anderson and I attended. Tom,
No.
Can you tell us your
No,
take?
I was out of town that day.
The first one. Remember the first one in February? When they were basically just kind of, it was 20 minutes. They presented what they're doing and encouraging towns to participate, and it was very simple. And then at that meeting, they had us do a detailed schedule, and then that's when I had Councilmember White come, and they actually had maps, and they had us come into and discuss what their intentions are. But they did say that they want feedback from our town council. And so had we not had a mayor, or a council, we wouldn't know anything about this. This would have happened without our knowledge.
So can you back up, Tara? What is this? I mean, what is it? Are they building a superhighway through here?
So Kaufman County hired Freese to build a thoroughfare planning for future expectations and growth and development, okay? So in their city planning part, they paid 100% of this consulting company, and this consulting company said, you know what, it's not written in stone, but we want your input as a town. We want your input of what you think. You have jurisdiction in your area now. And at the end of that meeting with Councilmember White, we joined up with Mike Sims of Terrell, and he said, this was Mr. Brian Crook. He asked the question of the city manager of Terrell. He said, so what do you want to do in this area? He said, well, that's part of poetry. They incorporated. We don't have a say in their area anymore. He said, we were going to put a 6-lane highway there, but we don't have jurisdiction in there anymore. And so, that's up to them. And so as I'm cheering, I'm thinking, okay, we have a voice now. And we wouldn't have known anything about it, because it was only city leaders who were invited to this thoroughfare meeting. And they're solidifying it, and I didn't know this. He made it sound like they're going to be planning for 2 years, but it's going to be solidified end of June. I just found that out today. So we need to come, and actually I called Brian Crook today, and I talked to him for about 30 minutes, and I said, well, so what are our options? And he's like, well, your council can come up with their own thoroughfare plan. If they want to do something different, they have a say in that. And so, again, they only go to town leaders, city leaders. And so we have a say via your council for that. And so this map that they've was one of the originals, but we have a say now in how whether we want that or we don't, or.
So what are they looking for? Are they looking for an express lane through Poetry? Or
Well, because of the expected growth, and I've read this elsewhere, but they said the growth of Texas, either from California or Colorado or from immigration, is set to double in Texas within the next 10 years. So let that sink in. That's a lot. And so, although we don't particularly want growth in our little rural piece of heaven here, it probably will happen. We can't keep all of it out. But how can we manage that well? And so one of the things he said was, you need to really think about, what is the anticipated growth? Do you want it? How does the allocation support the growth that we are having?
Let's talk about the map real
Okay.
quick. Are they planning on using eminent domain? Because, they have in this plan that the little road that I live on will eventually curve around and connect to 34. That's going across some high-priced property.
Right, and so, yes, it's pretty
So that's
alarming.
going through some high-priced property back here, so are they?
So one thing he told me was to not mention eminent domain. He said, leave that to legal, but I'm like, look, this is our area, and I want to protect our citizens if we all possibly can. And so they do not have, our council gets a say in this, and I'm very grateful for that. Again, if we weren't a town, we would not have a say. And so we have a say. If we don't, and I would prefer not have any of it, honestly. But I do understand, you don't want backlogged traffic, so,
And they also have these wide swooping curves that go across.
Water.
Well, not just the water.
Oh, so this would be the new part.
Yeah, they might.
So
they
one
might
of
backfill
the,
lake,
I
but that's a
don't-
lot of people's property.
It is,
there.
and that's alarming to me personally. So they have, one of the thoroughfares goes from 3486 all the way across to 249, which turns into Poetry Road, and then they make a curve, an arch to 243, which is that they've really redone that. They spent $2 million redoing that road, and so it's beautiful now, but that goes all the way to 205. So it would free up some traffic, but then you have, and right now 3486 is a 2-lane highway, and he was talking about, well, you could keep that a feeder. He said they have all these different names, a feeder road, and keep it small if you want. You could actually choose to only make that right of way is like 45 feet on each side. He said you could choose. So if you're having a conversation, we got to be privy to that. I'm sorry, guys. Sorry.
Just explaining the map over there.
Oh, okay. So you could choose to have 30 feet on each side if the council chooses to do that. But I do think this is a very complex issue, and it's been thrown at us. Like I said, they made it sound like we had a year or two, and then I find out today that we don't. So.
But why wouldn't they follow existing roads? They have this swoop from on Poetry Road, basically from the corner of
that's what I just
the road that
Yeah.
you were talking about.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they just go up Poetry Road and then across 240?
Well, some engineer has come up with all kinds of ideas for our area, but here's the thing, we get a say now, okay? We have a say in our area via your council. We have a say now. And so if we don't want that road cutting through private properties and all of that, we can say no. We can say no.
By the end of next month?
Well, I would suggest that we form a subcommittee and maybe even have some citizens on it. That it's going to take some mind work, some to really hash this out, and it's complex. And so I think that we need to definitely.
Did Hunt County hire this same firm?
No, this was hired just by Kaufman.
Because my question, the dotted line that goes north out of that big sweeping loop you're talking about, I'm having a hard time reading it because because it's the print, but I'm thinking that's a 4 to 6 lane highway, but it extends into Hunt County, so I was wondering what Hunt County looks like.
I think it's more than 4 to 6. They were talking about like a 12 lane from
Well,
Mexico.
if you'll squint your eyes real hard, you might see 4 to 6 lanes over there with a 180-foot right-of-way easement.
It is hard to see, and I had another link, and it expires in like 5 days.
I'm just curious if Hunt County is in the same thoroughfare meeting. I would think that if roads are crossing county lines.
They did say in the meeting that they'd met with them and kind of worked it out together, but I know that they don't have any say in Hunt County. They just kind of mutually agreed on what they were going to do.
That is a very good question. I would like to consult Hunt County. It makes me think, well, what else is there that we don't know about that they're trying to do in our area? So we do have a say now. Hallelujah. We have a
Well,
say.
and I would check Rockwall too, because we have ETJ and Rockwall. They could sneak in from that corner. But I'm going to just make a guess here that we can make noise, but it may not be very scary to them because there's a lot of value in big engineering projects like that.
Okay, but
That's true. We were able to negotiate at least an alternative. I hope we can even get more,
Yeah,
but
just tell them we just repaved 34. It's a great road. They can just speed as fast as they want all the way to Quinlan. So
that's what I was saying.
tell
They
them our
were-
roads are terrible. We don't
well,
want them over
and
here.
I actually was trying to get them to, because they're thinking 635 loops. Okay, they're thinking as it burdens out of Dallas area,
Big.
they're thinking loops,
Big.
right? That's what they're hired to do. Well, we can say no, not in Poetry, because we don't want it to grow. Take that somewhere else.
So this, Tara, this would be a outer loop outside of
That's
George
kind
Bush?
of what, well, this is again for Kaufman County, but they're wanting to have a thoroughfare that alleviates traffic.
So this loop's been talked about before, Tom.
Wait, alleviates
This is-
traffic from what?
This is taking traffic from 34 to 205 without taking them through Terrell. This loop's been talked about for years.
And I did ask him about that. He said, well, because of all the growth, it's on acceleration. So that's why their deadline is June.
So we have a say-so. I say so no.
No.
Amen.
I know, right? So
Now, the question that Brian brings up, that's what eminent domain laws are written for.
well, but again, because we're incorporated, we have a say. And so the TxDOT fella, he said that even on our county roads, he's like, well, we don't really have a say on your county roads. But I guess if the state wanted to come in, we may not have a say. But as far as Kaufman County goes, at least from what they told us in these last two meetings, that we did have a say. So, sure.
The way this is working is,
Could we get you the microphone?
probably been in the work for years.
Yes, it has.
Right, and normally the engineer will come up with various alternatives and have multiple public hearings all around the county to get input from citizens, public entities, county commissioners, all of the stakeholders. And they'll put that all together, and they will have probably 3 final renditions of the various right-of-ways. And this is to plan for the next 100 years, right? This is tomorrow. This is the next 100 years. So this looks like it is the final iteration of where they're coming down to. And I only say that, and I only saw it today, because it says final draft. Normally it's a draft A, B, C, alternate A, B, C, right? And so when they are looking for input, you do have a voice, but the way this will normally develop is when there's a developer that has 500 acres, right? And it looks like this is going to be a major artery north and south through the county. I don't know what that is. I mean, it looks like there's going to be a loop down to the south. So when developers come and they say they got 500 acres and they're splitting that right away, they'll say, okay, we'll dedicate however many miles you need on both sides of that right of way. We'll dedicate it. You don't have to condemn it because it's going to increase the value of our property. And they'll try to get commitments of the landowners up and down that right of way to do that so they don't have to have eminent domain. They will use eminent domain ultimately after they can't get it voluntarily because of the increase in the value of the property. So all of the proposed thoroughfares that are in and around your town, that's what you need to pay attention to. And if you have an alternative route, other than just saying no, what's the alternative?
Okay.
You know,
We-
they're looking at
right.
flows of traffic, how many
Right.
cars per day.
Well,
Could you
and
bring the
one of
map
the,
so
one
we
of the
can
things I
identify that
suggested is
thoroughfare?
that we pave maybe some of the 245 that is now gravel. I mean, let's pave that, so it is more, it goes up to 243.
You pointed out a specific thoroughfare there that she said is going to be a major thoroughfare. Could we, you weren't sure what it is.
We
Could
don't have the same map
could-
you have.
Yeah, could we take a look at it?
This was
so-
in my packet, so.
Is it something you can share?
So.
I just
so,
highlighted that
Andy,
myself. I
this
was
is,
looking at it.
This is
Tara?
the one that I've got from the thoroughfare.
Okay.
Yeah. So the map that they, so this is.
That's for the entire county.
Excuse me,
Right.
could you tell us who you are, please?
Sure, I'm Andy Messer, Messer Ford McDonald. We're your law firm that represents you.
Thank you.
Andy, I got a question. You said they meet with all the stakeholders, and I know we've had stakeholder meetings for decades in Board Street.
Yeah,
Texas Transcorridor and all those. Why, if they know we're here, why haven't we had those meetings? And
They may have been publicized on website and newspapers, and because you're not a governmental entity, maybe nobody paid attention to them, and now
Just
you
missed
are,
them.
so you're going to get noticed like the mayor's talking about.
So they made a public post. They
have been,
met their
They met there, checked their box, and we didn't know about it.
Could have been.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know who your county commissioner is, but that. hopefully
should have been something he
Hopefully
was
he's an
talking to us
advocate
about.
for you as well.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah, that main thoroughfare will include 34 north of Poetry.
So can we have a committee to like really hit this hard? Because we need to hit this hard and fast, I think, to appropriately deal with this. Okay, so any volunteers? Kinsey, Alan, Laura, okay, let's write this down. All right. Okay, so Kinsey, Lori, Alan, I love this, I kind of know your names now.
Sherry?
Sherry. Yeah, that's Alan Ingram. Sherry Vinson. Anyone else? Rose. Okay, yes, Rose Ingram. Okay, any council members?
I want to, but I want somebody to take my P&Z spot so I can concentrate on this. Any volunteers?
Well, you've been working so hard. You're already up on that. They've been on this for months, so.
So no takers?
Yeah, so, I mean, I would,
Tom, can you hear us? Because if not, we'll volunteer you.
No, I couldn't hear that. Yeah, I would be on it, I guess,
well,
unless my
you
wife
are
throws
in
up
the
a fit
engineering
over there.
field, and then,
I think Tom
okay.
would do great, since he
Okay.
may or may not have attended the first meeting.
Well, I did, when I lived in Sunnyvale, that was when George Bush was
No.
being considered.
Okay.
No, I'm talking
And I
about
went
the
to
one
a
that
lot of
Tara said you
meetings.
may or
and
may
it's-
not have
it's
gone
like,
to.
Andy Messer said, there were a lot of meetings and there were multiple alternatives, not just one. It wasn't take it or leave it. And so, everybody, including Sunnyvale, had a say-so in it, but it was huge and it was long-lasting, and I would expect this would be the same way.
Well, they're at the final stage of the planning, from my understanding, so.
Well,
so-
wait a minute, Tara, planning is one thing.
Right.
Approval is totally different.
Exactly, and that's what they
I guess.
explained. So, all right, so we have a citizens committee, we'll just call the Thoroughfare Committee. So now's your chance to get involved. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 citizens, and then Tom Anderson, and I guess myself. I would like to be a part of that, just. It's on my watch, and this is vital for our area.
I would like to be on it, Brian tells me.
You would?
Yeah, that's what he told me.
Huh? You just voluntold him?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to be on it, Jackie?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't wait.
Okay, so two council members.
No, that's all I'm going to say in every meeting is no.
Got volunteered. All right, so we have a proposed citizens committee made up of Kinsey Salisbury, Lori Giard, Alan Ingram, Sherry Vinson, Rose Ingram, Councilmember Mike Jaffe, and Councilmember Tom Anderson, and myself. Is there a motion to approve that subcommittee?
Comments?
Okay, comments. Thank you. I guess before we vote on that, we need comments. Okay, thank you. Chad McFarland? Okay, Chad West? I know, it's a terrible copy. I apologize. That's all he gave me. And the
there's a
sad
link
thing
to
was,
the
there's a
whole-
link, but we can't, they didn't allow us to do it public. And in fact, it expires in like Friday. And the last one I had expired. So they're really holding tightly to the rest of these things.
And it was a low-resolution image, so that's...
Like, my copy is not any better than yours, honestly. So until I went to the room and saw the big one, I took a few snapshots. Maybe they'd be better.
You'll know they've started, Chad, when the big dozers start dropping off in front of your house.
So, Chad, come on up. You're slotted to speak anyway, so...
Well, if this
You
is
got
a
it?
public
Okay.
project, I would think it would be public information. I mean,
Well, how public is that
so
to
you're
them?
saying the link you shared with us is not allowed to be shared? That gives you 185 meg of all the documents?
It expires Friday, is what he told me.
Well, I got a
and on the
copy,
bottom
Chad.
of it, it says it's not to be shared.
Oh.
So I don't know, maybe, I don't know, this preliminary, I don't know. Yes, sir.
Chad West, 19370 FM 986. I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to have something, I mean, I know I've got older eyes, but Simeon, can you tell me the first word in the legend?
Oh, no, I cannot.
So I'm not sure how anybody, even the Citizens Committee, is supposed to make any heads or tails out of this without an image that you can actually read and say what it's going to do.
I think as a citizens committee, we can ask for a more detailed map, and so, yes, it definitely would need that. That's a good point, Chad.
Well, and if we can get that map, is that something that we can post on the website so that others can weigh in on?
If it's hired by Kaufman County and we're part of Kaufman County, we can do that, I would think.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a public works thing, so it's got to be
Our legal
public.
counsel said we can do it.
We'll take it.
We'll find
All
you a
right,
copy,
Kenzie
Chad.
Salisbury.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand the perimeter of it. So y'all went to the meeting in February, and y'all knew about this in February? And then we have until June to make the decision?
So we were told at that time that, like it's a ferial, like it's going to take 1 to 2 years to plan. And then the next meeting wasn't until March 25th. And I gave the council in their packet that schedule. But then remember, there was a storm that hit that night, an ice storm. And so then it was postponed till April. And then in the April meeting, we didn't have any legal counsel. So, and of course, we nearly didn't have a meeting at all because we had no secretary, we had no legal counsel. So I put it off because it wouldn't do any good if we didn't have legal counsel. So I just found out today that their deadline is June, and that was shocking to me. So because in the February meeting, it was very loose. It was just 20 minutes, just presenting what's going on, and then they were just having you sign up. So I signed up immediately for the slotment they had was in March 25th week, and so we signed up. That was postponed because of the weather, and then I had Councilmember White go with me, and but even then he made it sound like, oh, we have all this time. Well, then today he says, oh no, I'm like, what? So.
Okay. My other question is, so we have the committee and we come up with some different options and things like that. Are we going to bring it to the council for them to review before we submit it? And if it's in June, are we going to have a special meeting for that? Like when?
It is pretty critical, so we might have to, since that's kind of one reason I need to be involved, I think, is so that I can call a meeting, if necessary, a special meeting to address this very thing.
And then what are our options, like if they do not accept our ulterior options? Like at the end of the day, is it going to be their say what they want? Like we'll have no control if they don't like what we decide?
So I've never gone through this process with Kaufman County before, so I mean, a lot of it's going to be negotiation. The further there are through that process, it could be more difficult, which is why it's important we go and give them alternatives and not just say, no, we don't agree, because those are things that can be easier if we're saying, well, here's the backup plan, that would work better.
Right, and that's where that final final draft is what's scary, is because they've
Yes.
already went through all those other options besides, what we've have our voice to do.
So it would be important for the committee to meet soon, and then I would say probably a special meeting for council approval of committee recommendations so that we're meeting that June deadline for them.
Okay, so one of the things I did notice is that the other cities, well, I know Terrell, when they came in after Simeon and I were there, they had alternatives, and because Poetry Incorporated, they had to change all their plans. Yay. Yay. They had to change all their plans, so they had other plans. And so, but we need to come up with our plan as what we do and don't want in our area.
I'll also say that whenever we were talking to them, we already came up with one. We were just, kind of brainstorming, but we already came up with one alternative that's a lot better than just slicing right through the heart of Poetry. I mean, it's not perfect. It still requires them to build near the water tower, which it'd be better to build nowhere, in my opinion. But it's better than that. So
And
we have
you're
an
not on the committee,
alternative.
right? You're not on the committee, right?
No, I'm not
Okay.
on the
Will you
subcommittee.
provide that to us beforehand? Or like, 'cause
So-
I don't think we can all discuss it with
Yeah.
the open meeting.
So that was the link that
Absolutely,
expires on
absolutely.
Friday, was the draft number 2, an alternate to 3486, 249, was to cut through, and I personally don't like either one of them, but to cut through near the water tower and connect to 245 to make that an arc through there. So, okay.
Who has the highest speed internet and can download these files?
So I might have to go physically and get a digital file and then upload and take it to a survey company that I have that access to that, so I can get them printed off a larger map, just like P&Z has. So we could possibly do that.
Sounds
And
good, thank you.
I can show you where it is after the meeting if you'll
Okay.
come up.
I'm
kinda
sorry.
draw it.
Okay, so that's time. Okay. Kevin Sinkovich?
Kevin Sinkovich, 11090 CR 2400. Tara, if you can get us, and it's legal, link to the link, or allow us to get to the link, we can go in and start screenshotting everything we possibly can, as long as, we're not doing anything that would jeopardize.
So you're thinking our tech
I think we
can do it?
I think we get Lauren
Okay.
on it, get her in there and start
Okay.
screenshotting everything we possibly can.
All right.
In as high resolution as we possibly can, and then if you guys come back and say, post it on poetrytexas.org, God, I'm happy to do it, so.
Well, before I left the house, I downloaded it. It was like 185 meg. So I have a copy of it.
It's
of what
just
he sent us, that link, and I
The
didn't see
link,
on there
and
that
that's
it
the
said we-
alternate plan number 2 or something.
Was it? Okay, well, I don't know. I
It
didn't
wasn't the first one, it was another one.
Well, we'll grab everything we can to
Yeah,
Kevin's.
okay, thank you, Kevin. All right, so Rose Ingram,
Rose Ingram, 1150 County Road 249. I know there's been a group from the beginning that was not happy with Poetry Incorporating. I had a lot of questions myself, and I know at times it seemed like it was thrown together or rushed. But one of the reasons I voted for incorporating was because I live on 249 and I saw the maps of what Terrell wanted to do out this way, and one of them was to put at least a 4 or 6 lane highway right out my front door. And I know there still is a group of people who are unhappy with the incorporation of the town of Poetry, but this was one of the reasons I voted for it, so that we could have a say, so I don't have to look at a 4 or 6 lane highway out my front door.
thank you, Rose.
Thank you, Rose.
Amen. Sherry Benson? Yes, ma'am.
Know her?
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Sherry Vinson, 5937 County Road 323. When are we meeting, Mike?
Where are we meeting?
When are we meeting?
Oh, I don't know. It's going to be soon, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm baling hay right
so-
now. It's going to be a couple days.
Yeah, us too. So We'll meet after this meeting to set up a time, but we need to vote on it first, make it
I mean,
official.
because there's only 3 of us, we can have a normal conversation about this outside
We
of the
actually
meeting,
can.
right?
It'll be
Okay.
refreshing, yes.
So we'll talk.
So, all right, next person, Del Bryant. Del Bryant, are you here?
It passed.
He passed, okay. All right, so we have, I think, a motion setting up a Thoroughfare Citizens Committee with Kinsey Salisbury, Lori Giard, Alan Ingram, Sherry Vinson, Rose Ingram, Councilmember Jaffe, and Councilmember Anderson, and myself. So all those, wait a minute, has that been seconded?
I second it.
Okay, seconded by Fowler. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. That's important work, guys, for our area. All right, so number 6, discuss efforts made by the town council thus far to protect the poetry way of life. In the packet, I just included from a survey from literally a little over a year ago. It was March 30th and April 1st, of 2021. What is your definition of country? The sample was small, but it was 35 people from all over town. The top 2 definitions were it's quiet, you have freedom or few restrictions. That's 18% said that. 15% was animals and cattle. You have animals and cattle. Another 15% said open land and pasture. 12% said away from city traffic. 9% said equally they want their sense of community and helping and space between houses. So because this is such a loose poetry way of life, what does that mean? Is that potholes and sand pits, or is that, hopefully we can improve upon our, what is that? It's kind of ethereal. So I'd like to hear, this is actually question was actually submitted to the council, so I'd really like to hear what the council would like to say before I have closing comments.
Yeah, so I actually sent this one in, Tara, and I felt like, we've been sitting here for a year.
Mm-hmm.
We're halfway through our terms. I felt like we needed to be held accountable by the citizens of poetry. All of us ran on some campaign that said something like, keep it like it is, keep it country, keep it ag, keep it whatever. We all had various ways of saying that, but I think most of us were supportive of protecting what we felt was special about poetry and the poetry lifestyle. So I just wanted to check in as a council and give the citizens an opportunity to weigh back in as well as to, we've dealt with a lot of things over the last year that I think have nothing to do with protecting poetry, agrarian, whatever. Some way we sort of firing some things up, like we've got some licenses going on and people that have some pretty strong opinions, as was just brought out one side or the other, but I ran, and I'm on this council because I wanted to protect what I thought was great about poetry, which is different than other people think. But I'm just curious how we each feel about the job we've been doing and any comments that the citizens have, because I believe those should continue to be guiding principles for our future actions, because otherwise we can get mired in the whole celebrity of becoming a politician and passing laws and being entertained by legal this and that. But if it doesn't accomplish the goal of, poetry still feels as great as it did 5 or 10 years ago, or my gosh, I don't even recognize the town anymore. So.
I think that's an excellent check. The state has, of course, we're under the auspices of the state rules. Being a type A general law town, there's certain things that the state requires of us as a town. So we're kind of checking those boxes off this year. And of course, they don't make us have a fire department. They don't make us have police. They don't make us do a lot, but they do make us deal with our trash. And so we've dealt with that to some degree. So as difficult as that has been. But yeah, no, I think that's worthy to look at that. What have we done in order to, and I think this whole Thoroughfare thing is just case in point. We have a voice. Can we use that in a strategic way to go forward and protect our area from those who really don't care as much as we do. Is there any other council input on that?
I've been held hostage by the P and Z committee. That's a lot of work.
Oh, it is. And we've
You
been
wanna
putting
talk
in
about the P&Z?
a lot
Go
of good
ahead.
work for that. I hope that'll help kind of keep the country way of life. That's going to give us the most power to keep out the Walmarts and, people throwing up big electrical grids like is at over by Tiger Mart now. And I hope we can put to use some of the powers that we're given as a town a little later. I don't see we weren't able to do a lot this year, I don't think. I think there's been a couple things, and thank goodness for the Thoroughfare thing. I mean, that has brought to light some of the things we're able to do for people. I hope we can do even more this next year, now that we've got things set up for the town.
So since you mentioned P&Z, they meet, 8 to 10 hours a month? And they're pouring through the documents that will help us solidify what kind of, right now they're working on, I understand, businesses. What businesses do we want in town? Are we going to allow, Triple X in town or not? Are we going to allow, like a mini Walmart here or not? What are we going to allow? So they're fleshing that all out, and it's very detailed and it's very complicated. So I'm excited that, they're really committed to that. And so I've only been to one of the meetings to present some legal information that I was given, but they're really working hard on that. So I really appreciate our citizens and the 2 council members who are putting the heavy work into that, researching that. And so if you have ideas, you can approach one of them. But any other council comments on that?
Yeah, on the Poetry Way of Life, of course, we had to establish the framework of being a town. That's a given. But when people talk to me and outside of the area, and they're like, well, why are you on a town council? And it's like, well, for us, it was a group of individuals who got together to become a town in order to remain individuals. And so now that we have the framework established, that's what I'm hoping that we're still moving towards, is being able to retain that individualism while we're still working within a framework. And I know that there's been a lot of people who don't like how it's happened, and that's a valid position. But I think that we're just now getting the stuff behind us that we had to do in order to provide the protections that we wanted to protect. So I think that we're on the path. It's just a path full of cactus and brambles.
Yes.
Let me address, you all may have already considered this, talk about the way your town is configured, where your city limits are, which is all roadways, I understand it, around roadways.
Mostly. Mm-hmm.
And it's not the tracks within that and outside of that.
Well, it's 311, 411, or 511 feet
Right,
off
but it
the
doesn't
roadway.
go, it's not deep,
No.
doesn't have large tracks that you have.
No.
Right.
Okay, so
Well,
that
we
means
have
you
a
don't
lot of
have.
farmland, so that makes,
Yeah,
we have
so
a
that
lot of
means
farmland.
those tracks aren't in your city limits, and they're not zoned, right? And y'all may know this, so the city's, your way of life is critical to this community. So Heath has the same thing. Some of the other towns we represent have the same exact standard, although it's not quite as rural as you are. So Heath, we annexed everything in the entire town before the Municipal Annexation Act was changed, so that we could zone everything at a minimum of 1 gross acre per lot, so that there cannot be, for example, like in Blue Ridge right now, we have developers all over Blue Ridge, and the last developer, he has 40-foot lots. So 40-foot by 80-foot lots. It's very dense.
Wow.
The Blue Ridge is just like you now, but for whatever reason, they have made the decision, we're going to let this development in, 100-acre development in, with 40 by 80-foot lots. Well, that's going to change that town. That town's population is going to double by that one single development. And they're the developers are all over that town. I don't know how far development has come down to Kaufman County, but it's probably, there are probably developers that are looking at all of the tracts around here, and they're already buying them if they haven't already bought them. And the way developers work, just to give you the general scheme, is they will buy a tract of land that may be partially in your city limits, partially in your ETJ, and the rest in the county. And they will say that they want to work with you, and they do if you mostly do what they want. And so they will say, okay, we want all 40-foot lots. And most communities don't want to live like that. And they go, okay, we'll put some 50-foot lots and maybe some 60-foot lots. But right now, the standard is pushing to 40-foot lots. It's very, very tiny lot size. And so if they can't come to an agreement with the town, then, and that would be approved by your council in a development agreement, then they will file either through the Texas legislature or the TCEQ something called a municipal utility district, a MUD. A MUD is a separate governmental entity with its own taxing power, its own condemnation power, its own roadway power, own water and sewer power. They'll put in a package plant that can put in and discharge into a creek that will allow that dense development, and cities have no authority over that. They are totally regulated by themselves. They'll have a vote for that MUD. They'll move in a trailer home. They'll move one person in there. They'll have an election. That one person will vote, and it will approve that MUD for all 500 acres. And then they're gone. They're off and running. And there are special lawyers that do this that have come from Austin that are becoming more difficult to deal with in all of the North Texas area. I don't know if y'all are seeing that yet, because I don't know exactly where the development is around here.
Yes, there's one in our northwest corner of in our ETJ. We have one that a lot of our citizens are unhappy
They're difficult
about.
to combat. You can combat them. You would need a special water lawyer in Austin to help do that. But that's kind of the choice that you will be faced with, and it will come right to you, and you're going to have to act on it in a fairly quick manner, in a matter of months, basically. So if you want to control your way of life, that's clearly what y'all are saying, resoundingly, you can only do that with property that's in your city limits and that is zoned. So there's one of our towns, we represent about 60 towns around Dallas and Fort Worth. One of them is Lakewood Village. Lakewood Village is a large rural community on a peninsula on Lake Louisville. They zoned their entire town at minimum of 1 acre lots. They had developers come to them and say, no, we're not going to do it. You're either going to put in 1 acre lots or we're not dealing with you. We're not putting all, and because they had zoned it that was their regulation, and the developers had to capitulate to that. So all I'm saying is all of your property that's in the ETJ is not in the city limits. It doesn't have zoning, so it's not protected. Only property in the city limits has zoning is protected. You don't have to have ad valorem taxes. You could have a piece of property that's 10 acres in the city limit, and it could be zoned 5 acre rural lots, and you could have no ad valorem tax, so there wouldn't be any taxes paid on that. So that's just an idea. I'm throwing it out there. I don't know where you are, but that would be a way. It would be a very unique way.
Now,
Most cities have ad valorem taxes. Y'all are already in probably 1/2% of all the Texas municipalities that have no ad valorem
There's
tax.
36. We're number 36.
Yeah,
that
out
don't
of
have
1,200.
Right. So there's not very many, but we are number 36.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I'm just trying to give you an idea so you understand the distinction between city limits, ETJ, and county, and what y'all need to think about. I know y'all are a fledgling city. What you need to think about if you really want to try to protect your way of life, that would be a tool you could use to do that. And
Can you repeat that, what you just said?
The tool,
The
yeah.
tool.
yeah,
I
so
wanna
the
make sure I
tool
understand.
would be to try to get property to be annexed. It can only be-
Voluntarily
Has to be
annexed.
voluntarily annexed.
So that we protect ourselves
And then
from
you
the
zone
likes
it.
of these.
You zone it. You control the zoning. If you want no commercial, like Heath has very limited commercial, and it's almost all large residential lots. That's because that's how they zoned it.
I know our
And
P&Z
that's
is.
controlled by the council.
Right. Right.
And you have, so you have your comprehensive plan that your P&Z is working on. Your comprehensive plan is your vision for what, next 20, 30 years? So it's your goal for what your whole area is going to look like. But your comp plan is accomplished by zoning. Zoning must match your comprehensive plan. If you don't have any zoning, I mean, you got a comp plan, and that's a goal, but it has no teeth in it. It has no enforceability unless you have zoning. You can only zone property in this city. So, I mean, I understand how you protected yourself from a neighboring municipality, and that's probably very wise. But now I'm just trying to say you have this large rural area, and the only real way to protect that is by being in the city limits and zoning it, even if it's just one zoning category. Like if you look at the city of Dallas, you probably have 50 zoning categories, but you only have to have 1, 2. If you want to have some commercial around some of your more larger streets, you could have a type of commercial or, whatever you want.
So early on, we were trying to encourage people voluntarily annexing in.
Yeah.
And the way we wanted to do that was to maybe give a future property tax exemption of like 50 years or something. And so that they wouldn't, so folks are afraid, I think, to voluntarily come in because they're afraid that we might enact a property tax.
Right.
So we have 0, but that doesn't mean future councils will want to do 0. So we were brainstorming and thinking that we could
So there is a tool in the local government code. It's really like a non-development agreement, and it is the only thing in Texas law that cannot be changed from one council to another to another. So councils normally can change depending on their political will. Even if they have a contract, you have a contract that's a 10-year contract. Well, Council B can come in and 5 years into it say, I don't like whatever's happening, so I'm going to terminate it. Well, there's a consequence. You'll be sued for breach of contract. But the council is not bound by it in cement. But a non-development agreement or development agreement in the ETJ can last up to 45 years, and if one council makes a decision, it cannot be changed for 45 years. So you could put a term, I haven't ever seen it done.
Well, I think I was told that Terrell had that at one time because a lot of the property in Terrell was given to the city of Terrell, and they had a 45, 50-year agreement, and then that expired, and then that's why you're seeing all this explosive growth.
Right,
so they apparently had that, and it was a sleepy little town until recent.
How's that law possible if our Texas legislation can change every session?
Well, that's true. The legislature can change laws. That law has not been changed for a long time.
Hasn't, but it can at any minute.
It can, just like the Municipal Annexation Act wasn't changed for a long time, and then it was through.
So with the right lobbyists and the right people wanting, D.R. Horton's wanting to develop property and their money in the lobbyists, they can change that law. Like
Understand?
But we could, if we had it enacted,
now,
they could now or soon, they wouldn't be able to touch it, would they?
They probably would have what's called vested rights, which means that the law that's applicable at the time that's put in place is frozen.
Okay.
You can't change the law after that, like grandfathering.
So that sounds like it really has some teeth. We've been trying to figure out a way to have some teeth to protect our area from the developers that don't really care about our area, that just want to, make a buck and put 5 houses per acre and then leave, know.
That's what
and
happens.
So that sounds like that has some teeth to it, maybe. And so, but can we give our citizens something like, when you say non-development agreement, can we make it where our citizens feel like they're benefiting right now for that? Like would we be able to say, hey, if you're involved in this non-development agreement and we have this overarching idea, can we say, okay, just like you have economic development centers, EDCs, can we have an ag development center where we're going to entice you get 0 tax, property tax, potentially for that 45 years, 0 tax?
Yeah, there's another statute that deals with if property is being used for ag or wildlife currently, you can have an agreement with them It's basically a non-annexation agreement. It says, we have an agreement, this property owner in the city has this agreement, as long as you continue to, your current use of it for ag or wildlife, and I can't remember what the, you know what the maximum term is? I don't know what the maximum term is. Then the city agrees, we will not annex you.
I thought it was
If you
75
start,
years.
the minute you start developing it, if you come in and put a plat in to subdivide it into multiple lots, or if you have a concept plan for development, that agreement goes away. And then
And
we
it's
can't.
not
then we-
all development. So like if someone has family member that they want to put a house on their property, that's not what we're talking about here. We're
Right.
talking about the D.R. Hortons of the world
I know.
that are coming in and just really egregiously taking advantage of our town and its people and its citizens and our way of life. And so so there's a difference. We want to protect family members who want to say, hey, I want to have granny on the corner
Yeah.
lot, or I want to have my child or my grandchild on the corner lot. That's not what we're talking about here. I think we can have a differentiation there, right? There's definitely.
But I don't.
So
I'm
if
trying
we-
to tell you two different tools
Okay.
you could look at to try to accomplish this goal, and it may vary tract by tract, family by family.
Okay, so the first tool you mentioned was non-development agreement. The second one is current use.
It's a non-annexation agreement. That's what it is.
And even with the state ruling in 2019, we can still
Yeah,
use that?
yeah.
Non-annexation agreement.
So
Right.
Senate
And I
Bill
can give you an
6.
example of what one looks
Okay.
like.
So
Okay.
Senate Bill 6 and House Bill 347, that eliminates the city's power to annex.
That doesn't matter.
It doesn't
That
matter
doesn't
for
affect
that?
this.
Really?
It doesn't affect either one of those. It does,
If they're
through this session.
self-annexing, right, or no? If we're
That's
giving
the only
somebody-
way.
Yeah, the
That
last
is the
one.
only way you can do it.
Okay.
Say that again?
So,
Self-annexation.
So an annexation can only be done if the property owner requests it.
Right.
No other way. There's no other involuntary annexation by a city. Zero.
Let
Even
me
if
get
you're
a point
home
of
rule
clarity on that, though, because one of the concerns that we had was that Terrell had gotten grandfathered in on their proposed expansion into the area.
Well, they had their resolution in before that
They had
took
a master
They
plan
got-
ahead of time.
before.
They got grandfathered into their expansion into the area until we incorporated. Once we incorporated, that stopped that process. Should we disincorporate, are they then able to resume that if they still have it on the
Sure.
books?
They could resume it.
Yeah.
Wow.
for the
I
self-annexation.
mean, and they might, because
Well, after meeting some of their folks, they definitely had us on their docket.
yeah.
I mean, they've had plans for a while,
And
but
you know that
for the
firsthand.
self-annexation, is that done just individuals, or is that done as a group, like a community?
So the zoning I'm talking about, that has to be done by an annexation, and it's done in multiple tracts or one tract.
So, for example, what I'm really asking is it going to just be one person saying, hey, you can annex my property, or is it going to, or could it be 100 people
Yeah.
voting to annex? And if
Yes, it can be either one of those.
And if 51% say yes, is it the whole group, or is it just the 51
Depends,
people?
there's various provisions under the Municipal Annexation Act on how to do that. Some of them are for a vote for an area, and area is a loose definition. So it could be 100 tracts and 100 acres, and if you get a majority of that area then could potentially be annexed because they're asking to be, or it could be one single tract.
Okay, so if I understand this right, could we go as big as the town? Because what I'm thinking is, if anybody has plans to sell to a
Well,
developer, they're not going to self-annex.
There is a cap, I can't remember what it is, of the amount of acreage you can annex depending upon what your size of your town is. And you can do that year by year by year, and you can use it as a bank so if you don't annex that percentage in year one, you can save that for year two, and it accumulates year by year by year.
Okay,
But
that
I
makes
can't
sense.
remember.
And there are still people who have been waiting for us to open it up so that they could voluntarily annex in. Believe it or not, they they're in our, maybe in our outskirts and they want in.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the idea would be, if you want to be annexed, you sign a one-page request to be annexed, and then you'd have to have something, I don't know, a vote to say, in an agreement, okay, you can annex the zoning, we're going to put in, if whatever y'all's consensus is, a minimum of 5-acre lots residentially, then that's what all you would do. And then you say, we won't have an ad valorem tax. And that way they don't pay any tax on that property, even though it's in the city limits, and then they would be protected from a developer or anybody else.
Who pays that survey?
Who
pays that survey?
For the survey? Yeah. Well, you don't necessarily have to have a survey for an annexation. You can use a CAD designation.
Okay, so just
to get some clarification on they join in, they don't have to pay taxes in the future. That can't change even if legislation changes for the state. Is that secure to jump on?
No, because the problem, y'all set your ad valorem tax, right? When you do
the
your
council
budget.
votes it, but they voted
that's
zero.
That's capped from this last session, I think, at 3% change every year.
Right now, we're at 0.
We're at 0.
I know, you got 0.
And we plan to stay there.
Yeah, and that's probably politically how you will always be, because how you have been incorporated. I haven't seen a MUD go bankrupt, but I have seen developers go bankrupt, and it's equivalent. So the developer could come in, they don't have all the financing they need. They'll put in the infrastructure, and like the one that happened in Williamsburg, they put in 15 houses. They had the infrastructure, water and sewer in there. They put in 15 houses, put in the foundation for the clubhouse with the rebar sticking up, parking lot, and then they walked. And then another developer bought it, couldn't make it work, and then finally Murdad Moyadi, big developer in Dallas-Fort Worth, bought it. Okay, they made it successful, guaranteed everything, and it worked well, as it should have worked originally, but it languished for 10 years while two developers couldn't make it work. But much the same thing. If they don't have the financing, it's not going to make it.
As a point of order, I mean, I could listen all night because he's clearly
I know.
giving us some really good information.
Andy, thank you. Yeah, thank you. So he's given our P&Z and the council and the citizens something to really digest there. And, we've been kind of looking for the tools that really could help us. Thank you. So since this was your item.
No, I was just I want to get to the citizens. I see a long list of people that want to speak, and I'd like to hear how they think we're doing or not.
Okay, number 6. Okay, so we have Tracy Hibbs. Tracy Hibbs.
Tracy Hibbs, 9441 County Road 2432. First of all, I want to I guess I'll hold this. Thank you for allowing all of us to speak. Not a lot of city councils allow you to speak on every agenda item, so I appreciate that. The way of life actually in poetry should be the quality of life, and I think everyone on this panel is striving to make sure that we maintain that quality of life that we're used to. And it's funny, your name is Mr. Massey? Messer? I grew up in Heath. Some of my relatives helped establish Heath as a city, and I actually have this on my paper. And I wanted to follow up on what a MUD district is. Actually, off of 548, there is a MUD district that's been approved. It's 1 or 5 houses per acre. Everybody needs to digest that. 5 houses per acre. In a MUD district, the developer gets reimbursed for water, sewage, drainage, and roadways. So if you think by unincorporating poetry is going to help you, it's not. Not at all. I also encourage you to go to the municipal water districts, North Texas. There's several water districts, and look at their growth. 30 years ago, they slated the bottoms of 1565 to be a lake. I also know, as a matter of fact, I was talking to Tara about this today, that one of the water districts, the East Texas Water District, is using an aquifer pilot to store water for future uses. So if you want to know more about what's going on or going to go on in your community, your counties, there are plans, projected plans for 50 years out. Go look at them. And you can see roadways, waterways, all that kind of information. You can find it all. That is what is projected for areas. Make yourself knowledgeable. Being incorporated has already stopped or deterred a major thoroughfare coming through our small town. We want to maintain our rural feel. If unincorporated, we would lose to municipalities that do not have our best interests at heart. Terrell, Rockwall County, Hunt County. Okay, look at the growth of, look what's happened in Fate, look what's happened out on 205, on 548, look at Royce City, and it's moving this way at a rapid pace. Projected growth in 50 years is 3.7 million, 7 million people.
Yeah, your time.
Sorry.
Okay, Tracy, thank you. Thank you so much.
I have a lot more I can say.
General comments, maybe? Lori Giard, you have 3 minutes. It's not on 6? No, it's on 7. Okay, I'll scratch you off. Chad West.
For the record, was there light industrial business on that 35-person survey that you did?
I open-ended it on that, so there was nothing to that at all.
I'm sorry, this time it was me that couldn't hear. What was the question?
My question was light industrial business on that
On
idea
that
of what poetry is?
survey, there was nothing mentioned about that at all.
Yeah, I
Like,
see.
it was open-ended, so they could say any number of things, but yes.
It was a simple yes or no question. That's been my issue from the beginning, is we stand up here and we talk about keeping poetry, but we have people here who, while they're saying that, are making developments. Bringing in
PDZ
industrial business, and then wanting to try and make it okay because they're an agricultural business that you handpicked. Here's the issue that you have to understand, is once you change the use of that land, it has changed forever. There's $1.7 million investment on that. So what happens when that business goes out, if they go bankrupt? You don't have control of who's running that business going forward. And it's forever no longer a pasture, it's always going to be a business. I've asked this before, if you were okay with business, if they're so great, why didn't you build it next to your house instead of next to mine?
Okay, they're in the ETJ, so even right now, we don't really have a say.
At the end of the day, it still comes down to do what you say you were going to do.
Okay, in our brochure, which I have up here, it does.
I don't need to read the brochure.
Okay, you asked me a question, I'm not trying to answer you, okay? It says light industry is welcome. PDQ Fence Company is light industry.
But why? But they're not running commercial trucks on 323.
Okay, they have trucks, heavy trucks. So they are a light industry.
Why is it that you ran on keep poetry, and all the while you were developing property and selling it to light industrial business?
I didn't buy it.
How many fans have you saved?
Okay, why don't you talk to me
How many?
after this?
I don't want to talk to you
Okay,
afterwards.
This is personal. It's getting personal.
How many
Call to
farms have you
order.
saved in the last year?
What?
How many farms have you saved in the last year? Because I've saved 2.
Okay, so actually, we've bought plenty of land to save. We've been through this. This is personal, so talk to me later. Okay? Okay,
You
we
never
say-
answer the
okay.
question. You just want to validate
No,
that it's
listen.
okay for you to do it, but not other people.
We say 50 acres from a sand pit. We also say 50 acres from a wastewater treatment plant. So don't give me this, okay?
So,
All right,
again,
call to
they
order.
were so great.
All right, you're done.
Is my
Sit down,
time up?
please. No, call to order. That means you are making personal attacks, so you have to sit down now. Okay?
I just want an answer.
So why don't you come talk to me and we'll talk about it. In that brochure is exactly what we said. All right. Kinsey Salisbury.
(20579) North Highway 34. Okay, so you mentioned earlier, I'm sorry, I forgot what his name was.
Andy Mester.
Okay.
Mr. Mester.
That the only way to keep these developments out is with zoning, correct? And we can only zone our city limits. Well, we all know that our map is very unusual, and a lot of the areas is only 300 and so many feet from the thing. So how many developments are going to be trying to build in that 300 and something feet? It's going to be in that ETJ, correct? Which we don't have any power over because we have no platting, and P&Z has not solved anything.
Unless we can use some of the tools that he mentioned tonight.
But those tools, like you said, can only be used in the zoning area, correct? Unless, besides the self-annexing, which would then make it city limits, which would then be zoning.
One way is annexing, the other way is non-annexation.
And that can only be used in the zoning, the non-annex?
That can be used
That can
in
only
any
be
part
used
of
in
it.
city limits, I mean?
That's in the ETJ.
Okay.
So we have power to write a non-development clause in our ETJ
And
with the property owner. So we would have to, every property owner that is in our ETJ would have to have that agreement.
So if the property owner who, if they're going to sell to a development, is going to sell to a development either way, is not going to sign that agreement. And then also, correct? Okay. And then another question is, how many of the council members and mayor are going to self-annex their properties?
my property was already in.
All of it? All your property?
Well, with this, and you give us, and that's what I've been
Because like
waiting
if you're,
for.
say,
Yeah.
for example, you have, so many acres, if you self-annex, and that's going to be able to protect that from being developed. So how many of
I
y'all
want
are
to
going to do
raise
that to all their-
cattle. I mean, that's been our goal, to raise cattle. So we've been kind of waiting for the right tool, and I'm glad he said what he said tonight, is if you tell me that I can sign a non-annexation agreement, and it'll protect me from any future council's whatever, ad valorem taxes, then I'm in. So now I am married, so I would have to consult my husband. But
I
yeah.
think you're getting the tools a little mixed, but yeah,
Thanks, Kenzie.
it's an interesting.
Okay,
Interesting
so
tools.
Kevin Sinkovich.
Kevin Sinkovich, 11090 CR 2400 Poetry. Mike, did you say you were in?
Say again?
Did you say you were in if you could get a non-development agreement?
No.
Oh, did you?
I did not.
Fowler?
I didn't answer.
Yeah, I didn't think you did.
I didn't answer
So
either.
you're the only one so far that, and you didn't talk to your other half.
I haven't talked to my husband.
Okay.
That's with that caveat, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to tell you guys, you took I'm still trying to stay on topic here. You took a little piece of dirt called poetry and you formed it into a town. You came to the dance with 76% of the people that voted for you guys, and I think you're doing a really good job, considering what you've had to go through. I mean, there was a lot, some of the stuff has been hard, but you guys have stood out like troopers and stood up like troopers, and I appreciate you guys, and I hope you guys just keeping your eye on the dance and remembering what we're in this for, and Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. Shelley Smith. Sherry Benson. Patrick. What is the deal?
It's after Sherry.
Oh, it's after Sherry. Okay, Sherry, then Patrick. You're on here. I promise you're on here. Okay, we have a new secretary, so please give her a little slack. All right, I don't think it's intentional, but Patrick, you're up next.
Patrick Smith, 18730, 1565. I hope I haven't misspoken. For clarification, are we still on regular agenda item number 6?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
We're talking about Poetry Way of Life.
Well, okay, I want to make sure, I know we got a new secretary, ma'am. No hard feelings against you, okay? The agenda that I was permitted to review to see what I wanted to talk about, there was no agenda item for annexation agreements, non-development agreements, disincorporation. So did I miss that?
Okay, so because number 6 is kind of like a check, what Councilmember Jaffe said, we're talking about what have we done thus far to protect our poetry way of life, which is very broad. And so in that, it is very broad. It is just a broad agenda item.
No, ma'am. It is limited by efforts made by the town council thus far to protect the poetry way of life. That has not involved annexation agreements or non-development agreements or the issue of disincorporation, does it?
Yes.
Am I correct?
No.
Oh, so what has the town council done about annexation agreements?
The fact that we have not issued annexation agreements means that we're preserving the part of the poetry way of life that does not involve annexation agreements.
But it's talking about efforts y'all have actually done. Have you done something on annexation agreements?
If it were framed better, if we said that our effort was to not annex, not bring up annexation, and not discuss annexation agreements, so it's an effort in the negative, would that help better fit your definition?
An effort in the negative is in truth no effort. So you don't use this dictionary of newspeak on me, okay?
It's not newspeak, it's just English.
You're going to cut me off even though you let all these other people go over their time.
You asked me a question, so I'm answering.
What have y'all done on non-development agreements? What have you done, what have your efforts been?
I've actually discussed non-development agreements. Actually, even before we started the council, I discussed it on next door.
What has the town council done on non-development agreements?
Well, today we've learned about them.
Okay, today. So we put an agenda item on for what we were going to talk about today, even though it was thus far when the thing was posted. Yeah, okay. Now tell me about disincorporation. What has the town council done on that?
So far ignored it?
Pardon?
So far ignored it?
Correct. So there has been no effort on that issue.
Again, an effort in the negative?
Okay. Mr. Messer, tell me, sir, what efforts have been made by the town council of poetry thus far to protect the poetry way of life? You let him speak on and on as an expert.
Okay, he is an expert, okay?
Right.
As an expert, your time is finished, just like everyone is only given 3 minutes.
Off, though.
Okay, but I will allow him to speak as an expert. You can sit down now, though. Your time is up.
So in other words, based on what his answer is, I can't even
Okay, as chair of this
solicit.
council, I'm asking you to sit down, please. Thank you. Mr. Messer?
I'm not here regularly, so I don't know everything the town has or hasn't done. But I had to talk to you after the meeting, if the council would like, and answer questions you may have.
Okay, sir, for clarification, is it okay with you if I ask you another question?
It's not on the agenda, so I don't think we should.
I'm saying, is it okay with you?
Okay.
No, it's the agenda.
Okay, run and hide.
Okay, Dale Bryant. Chad McFarland.
Chad McFarland, 19850 FM 986. I want to clarify, I'd like to get a clarification from Mr. Messer on a couple of things that he said, and follow up on some of Kenzie's comments. Is it true that cities have no power to regulate MUDs outside of their city limits? Without the two annexation agreements that you talked about? Or the annexation agreement and the non-development agreement?
Mostly that's accurate, but they can have effect in the TCEQ on a MUD being initially formed, and also if they are formed, having input on whether a water or discharge permit is granted to them.
So the regulations that a city would have over a MUD have to do with the TCEQ regulations. Is that, am I understanding that correct?
Yeah, it's a complicated topic. It probably would go far beyond this meeting. And so if a town has zoning regulations in its city limits, that would regulate what a MUD can do in the city limits.
Amen.
If a MUD has subdivision regulations that extend to the ETJ, that would regulate the platting and the subdivision of lots in the ETJ of the town. Outside of the ETJ, yes, the city has no authority other than what I was just talking about through the PUC or the TCQ.
Okay, and then the last thing, the two tools that you talked about with the development agreement or the non-annexation agreement, the only way the towns would be able to utilize those agreements is if they had the individual property owners sign up with that. That is not something that the town can impose.
I mean, that's generally true unless, like I said, there's an area of property owners that want to have their own vote, and a majority of property owners in that area make that vote to have the town annex them, yes. But both of them require consent. You know,
Okay. Okay, I just, those were a couple of points that I wanted to try to clear up and make sure I understood correctly.
Okay, that's all of our citizen comments. Okay, so we've spent quite a long time on our check. Thank you, Mike, for submitting that. It was quite broad. I think we've learned a lot, but it's getting late. So just know that I know this town council, remember that we are unpaid. We donate a lot of time. I've never worked so hard in my life, and I know that a lot of the council members, especially those who are working on different committees, the planning and zoning, we're trying very diligently, and hopefully we'll make you proud, and hopefully we can do everything in our toolbox to protect our way of life. Number 7, discuss and consider the gift of the annex building and consider quotes for moving cost. Okay, so I don't yet have the letter in my possession, but we do have the video, and on the video that was presented, we can take the annex building, not the sanctuary. So the annex building is roughly about 1,100 square feet. So that includes 2 offices, a conference room, and the new addition, the bathroom area. And so it's been like pulling teeth to get a written bid. I finally got one well, I got a verbal bid of $7,500 from Danny Hightower. He's based in Mount Pleasant. He has 45 years' experience. He does have insurance. And then this written bid that I have is from Northcutt House Moving and Leveling from Cumbie, Texas. And he has a bid of $3,500. However, that does not include insurance. I also contacted Patriot. They, after seeing the dimensions, they were unable to do it. They only do mobile homes. So moving services are either the kind that box you up and move you, or they only do mobile homes, or it's very minimal when they actually move a whole building. So that's been kind of, it's been difficult to find that. And so I would actually like to solicit some help from the council members if you know of anybody. I'd like to, now this Danny Hightower, he does have insurance, but he said, well, if you've got a lower bid, your council will probably go with that. And I said, well, not necessarily. They'll want to know, I'm sure, that, we're covered. Now, Northcutt had said that if he levels it, it negates any insurance. And insurance would be $10,000. But they charge you that, but then if you level it, then it negates it. So he said it doesn't make it worthwhile. So I just thought that was, even $3,500 to $7,500, I thought that was it was less than what I was thinking. And I don't know what the council was thinking, but at least these two preliminary quotes were something that is digestible, maybe. So, any comments?
Is there a distance associated with those quotes?
This one said move 1 to 2 miles because we're going to be going into executive session discussing real property. I don't have a specific gauge on the mileage. I just said, hey, can you move it 1 to 2 miles? We're not sure. And that's what he put on this. And I told Danny Hightower the same thing. He was fine with that because, the hard part's getting it up. And our town doesn't have thankfully, it doesn't have a lot of structures and things in the way that makes it more difficult.
And Tara, are you going to talk about potential sites, or is that something
That'll be
later?
in the executive closed session, because that includes real property is one of the things that, because it's sensitive, we are allowed to go into closed session with our executive session with our legal counsel, and we don't want to embarrass anybody or put anyone, in a difficult open forum. You can understand that, hopefully. All right, so we have some citizens that want to speak to Agenda number 7. Lori Giard.
My name is Lori Gerard, 10781 County Road 2450, and I'll be honest, this is the main reason I came in.
Okay.
I tried to vote for you all, and for some reason I couldn't actually do it that day because, I don't know, because of a bunch of crap. But I vote in every election I can possibly vote for. But there's been a lot of mudslinging. And that's most of the reason I stay off of Facebook and everything. And I went back on it yesterday for the first time in probably almost years. And the same people are throwing the same names over the same crap. And then the promises were made to get you in the office.
So does this have to do with you're getting to the right topic?
But now you want me to pay taxes to move a building.
So we don't have any taxes? We have franchise fees?
Well, it'll probably come out of the not taxes, but sales taxes, because I buy stuff in the city.
So let me clarify for you. Okay, so
I'm sorry.
We have 0 property tax, but we do have some franchise fees. So we are required by state law to have a city hall that is.
I understand that, but I don't want the buzzer going on. I'm just trying to explain. But I came in here angry, but I've decided that I need to put that aside, because regardless if I'm mad and I'm pissed off at mainly one person, I need to work on this, and I need to work with you to solve other problems, because it's not going to solve anything.
Okay.
So hopefully on the other problem, we can work together.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm all for that. I'd be happy
So-
to meet with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Brett Patterson?
I'm Brett Patterson. I live at 10519 County Road 2332. I've put a lot of money into that annex building. I've done a lot of paint, and I did all the plumbing. I probably spent $15,000, $20,000 in that building out of my pocket. I spent about $15,000 or $20,000 for that annex building out of my pocket. And I will pay to have it moved for the city. Whatever it costs, Tara, send me a bill.
Thank you, Brett. It's generous souls like you that make poetry so much better. Thank you so, so much. You've been incredible. And I will just take that moment to say he and his crew have been just above and beyond, and I'm just so blown away at the generosity. Thank you so much. Your kindness makes poetry better. Okay, Chad West, Kenzie Salisbury, Kevin Sinkovich, Glenn Strauss,
Glenn Strauss, 11072 County Road 2454. And I think I just heard somebody objecting to spending our money to move a building. I suggest that's a lot cheaper than building a building, and we have to have land anyway. So, and I want to thank you guys. There's no way in hell I'd do what you're doing, and I really appreciate it.
Sherry Benson, Chad McFarland, Patrick Smith. Okay. Okay. You guys are going to break. Oh, Dale Bryant? It's not on here. Dale Bryant, you'll pass. Okay. We switched, I will say this, we switched from the index card system to a sheet system tonight, and so we're figuring all that out, because cards were sticking together and I was having trouble. So I just want to say this is, we're work in progress, okay? So I apologize if we're not getting it quite right. So executive session, in accordance with Texas Government Code Section 551.
Hang on a second.
Oh, whoa. Back up. Okay. Number 8, discuss and consider the agenda process. And this was from Councilmember Fowler, so I'm not really sure where he's going with this.
Tara,
but,
before we jump, I had a final comment on 7. I didn't know we're moving so quickly. Just as a point of order, and this has nothing to do with whether we do the building or not, I would like us as a council, when we take action on this, to decide that we want, just because somebody offers us a building doesn't necessarily, I don't disagree with the remark that was made at the end. We don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, but I think that we should set a precedent as a council that we do things on purpose, not sort of accidentally. So I think that at some point, and I know you and I have had different opinions here, that you think we voted on this. I don't think we have. That we need to at some point have a vote that says we want to take this building to be our town hall, and after that, if we vote affirmatively, then we can decide to spend money to move it or accept someone's offer to move it, which is very generous. But I don't want us to end up places accidentally, sort of.
No, I agree with you. So I guess I'm getting tired. It's after 10. All right, so does this council want to accept this generous offer from Brett Patterson to pay for the movement of the annex building?
I move we accept it.
Okay.
Wait, but this is hiring the secretary before we have the position.
I don't know that this is the agenda item that we can use to cover this.
Okay, so how do you want to do this?
We'll need it on the next agenda.
Yeah, I think it needs to be on the next agenda that the council votes to accept the building to be the future town hall, and then we can accept the follow-up.
Could we on this one, because it's written, discuss and consider the gift, so you're considering the gift if you want it on the next agenda?
Well, our time is running out, so I think we need to discuss this tonight on this, because remember, we have a time frame. So,
What's the time frame?
It was 120 days.
I think it's 120
from
days.
The offer.
Oh, well, I don't. Yeah, I think.
They did. So, but I think that's valid to discuss. Here it is. I mean, so do you fellas, okay, so we have had over 100 citizens put time and labor and money into this, and we do need, we seriously do need a municipal building. This would be, the building itself has been debt-free thus far, because we've had some generous citizens who've put in a lot of muscle work and donations and their time. And so I don't know that we have another option on the table. I don't know of, if we have someone who's willing to move the building, then the only cost we would incur, I believe, would be the land, unless someone donated some land,
So I got two questions then.
Okay.
First, I want to thank Mr. Patterson, and I know there's so many in here that's pitched in on that building. But first, for clarification, was the money donated to the city or to the Campground Cemetery Board? I paid for the labor out of my pocket. Okay, so you paid labor. So my question to the council is, what if we don't find this piece of property? Now we've spoken for this building, are we obligated to move it and set it in the middle of downtown without a piece of property? I mean, I think these have to go together almost. I think we can work together. I don't think we have to turn down the building, but I think if we don't find a piece of property, we might be obligated to move that building at some point.
Can we table this until after the executive session, come back to it?
I think we can. All right, let's do that. All right, so we'll move number 7 to after the executive session, because we have to come out anyway, and then we'll know more. So, all right, number 8, discuss and consider the agenda process. And this was Councilmember Fowler's.
This is just a plea for more time. I know y'all work endless on this, and it's almost a gift to y'all too, but I would like to start having all agendas and all supporting documents 7 days before the meeting. I'm a working member of council and of course making a living too, and it's a struggle. Sundays is the Lord's Day. I'm not going to expect anybody up here. And then Monday you go to work, Monday night you're trying to study. All I'm asking is that we can get everything 7 days before. I'm not asking y'all to expedite y'all's process. Maybe we have to delay or slow play some agenda items to get caught up. But this 72-hour deal for me is not working.
So the state, that is a state requirement, is 72 hours in advance, and there are times that we are just rushing to make that deadline. And I try and back it up so it's 96 hours in advance, because I don't like to procrastinate. But we have set up with our legal department the time frame based on our current rules of procedure, say 72 hours. So that would be a whole rules of procedure change. Isn't that right? And so I will tell you, being on this end,
I'm giving you more time. So we discussed earlier the mistake we made in executive session last period. And it's probably because we didn't have enough time to prepare. I think Emily's coming out of a surgery. She's trying to look over everything. But we actually went in there and voted to hire a secretary before we passed that secretarial position. I think with more time for us to chew on this and look at it, I think we're going to be better members of council. So I'm asking to extend it.
So Emily, the question is, so we've set up with legal counsel a week ahead of time, and that's how our rules of procedure. You must submit anything that's to be on the agenda 1 week, so that would be the Tuesday. It's by 6:30 p.m. You have to have all submissions in the current states. You have to have those in 1 week in advance to the agenda. So if we change what you're saying, then it would have to be 2 weeks before anybody could submit, because it would back everything up.
But
so
we can slow play that next month's agenda, or whenever we want to play this catch-up game,
So
right, Emily?
then, Emily, we would have to move our meeting to the week prior, and I have no idea what your schedule is. So if that was something that they wanted to do, Do other towns do that, by the way?
Yeah, there's other towns that'll say everything agenda-wise has to be in 2 weeks prior. So really, they're getting it in a month prior for it to be on this agenda. But, I mean, those are bigger towns, so it doesn't necessarily need to be that far back for you guys. But I can rearrange our call that we have to discuss the agenda with whatever works for you the week prior to what we normally do.
So could we do baby steps? Because that's a big switch, like for our whole management. I mean, it's a huge. I mean, I know it's really hard for you to see this side of things, and I would never have imagined it. I was always the one that had my term papers done in advance, okay? So I'm telling you, I'm not a procrastinator. But there's just a lot that goes behind the scenes. And so with that noted, can we possibly try to maybe have it earlier? We'd have to meet with legal earlier, and we'd have to work that out, and then maybe we can come and revisit that. Maybe we could have them earlier to you and just see if that's possible. Because right now, like,
We're having 5-hour meetings with multiple agenda items. Because the other option on this is I make a motion to table it, I just get one council member to agree with me, we vote on it, and then it rolls it down for another 30 days. Because I think we can all sit up here and say that we didn't go through every document we got with a fine-tooth comb. And that's our job.
So
I would generally agree. It would sure be nice to transition to a longer time. I feel like I could do a better job. I also work quite a bit. Me and Terry are on P&Z and, work 65 hours a week normally, and, evenings are sometimes booked up with other matters. So I try to squeeze this in when I can. It sure would be nice to get a week ahead. We've been doing it for a year, so I'm sure if there's a transition period to a longer time, or y'all can investigate and look at a schedule change, I'd sure appreciate.
But I think Terry is proposing to give us more time, not less time, right? He's not saying cut it to 2 hours, because I'm thinking like today, we got the receipt from the house mover 5 hours before the meeting.
and I've been asking for 2 weeks to get that.
5 hours. Now, thankfully, it wasn't a complicated document, but in the past, we've gotten other important documents as we walked in the door, and I just think that's.
No, I agree with
in
you.
the five, say, until Sherry was reviewing the packet, I hadn't seen the invoice or the bid. Because
Now, that was sent on Friday or Saturday. Okay,
I don't have it. I looked through the
That
packet.
was sent Saturday.
Yeah, this guy.
The bid. Oh, yeah, this guy, well, again, I've been trying to get him to give it to me in writing for 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
I understand, but I'm with Terry. I think we're underserving the citizens if we rush to a decision. I mean, if somebody's hair isn't on fire, I think it's easy enough to kick it to the next month or have a special meeting we certainly had one last week.
So.
That's what I was saying, too.
So I get where you're coming at. So we would have to, in order to make this happen, and I understand what you're saying because I don't like the rush either, but one downside of all that is that if you have so think about this, if we have announcements or anything, they would have to be put in 2 weeks ahead of time. So that the downside of that is that if there's pertinent information, guess what? It's already in stone. We can't add anything. So the upside to that is we can add things that are more timely, in a more timely fashion. So we will have to get with council to determine her schedule so that we could even possibly make this happen. Okay,
so I make a motion that we alter whatever documents we have to alter to provide a cutoff for all meeting materials to be 1 week, so it would be the Tuesday, 6:30 prior for each regular meeting.
Okay, so you understand, so for a year we've been doing it this way, and so to change, I'm just going to say realistically, I need a transition time, guys, because.
But again, I think we're buying you more time, not less.
It's more time for review, but less time for her to get all the items.
And that's what I'm saying. We slow play a month. If we don't do nothing but a workshop next month, and if we have a pertinent document that we have to sign next month, have one agenda item, and then that gives you a whole month to line up these 10 next agenda items that's coming.
But you have to cut it off, 2 weeks in advance. So it actually limits what you can put on your agenda because you're backing it up. And so so after the meeting, then So all these things you've put me to work to do, I have to spend the next 2 weeks doing these tasks. Okay, I'm not slow playing anything. I'm working my tail off.
Nobody said you were.
So I'm just saying, so all these things that we've done tonight, I'm going to be working like crazy the next 2 weeks to get those done. And so if you're asking me to then I have to solidify an agenda, are you kidding me?
Which ones has to go on the next month's agenda?
Well, we talked about
No, I'm saying has to, because I'm allowing you to slow play a month. What has to go on next month's agenda right now?
Thoroughfare.
The Thoroughfare has to.
So y'all gonna have a committee meeting. That's gonna be a group discussion.
And so they're going to have, so we may even have a special meeting for that. And then you have a special meeting, and if you start requiring that 2 weeks in advance, that's not workable.
Well, I think we can word that. It says special meetings or emergency meetings could have a smaller window. Emergency meetings do have an opening that allows you 24 hours of notification
Well, that's
already.
emergency, but special is
Okay,
different. yeah.
special, if you write that
Yeah.
in there, but it better be.
And I
written out.
understand, I do, from your perspective, I do get that, but
I just think we owe it to the citizens.
Well,
I think you're
but
nobody's-
here's the thing, I am working on the agenda like crazy from the week before continually, okay?
It takes hours and hours.
So it's hours
to
and
get-
hours and hours. So I'm working all those hours. I don't know, like, and I have a job too, okay? So I'm working all weekend. I'm working the entire weekend except Sunday. I try and take a break. So what I'm saying is, if I'm working all week, then our council should be also working on that.
Well,
And so,
but the problem I struggle with is Friday night or whenever we get the packet, I have no idea, even for the items that I submitted, whether they're going to be on there or not. So quite literally, it's like a surprise package. It's like, okay, so what's actually on the agenda? And then what are the materials? So I'm like Terry, I'm not arguing you're not working hard. I'm trying to put some slack in your rope, I thought. And it certainly would help me, because I'll be the first to tell you, I've come to the last 12 meetings about half prepared. Because like you, I mean, I may be retired, but I work 7 days a week, I mean, and try to go to church and other things. And so I think we're all in the same boat, and I feel like this would help all of us if we had a little bit, but
instead
yeah,
of saying 7 days, I think my stress level would go if you even said maybe instead of 72 hours, back it up. Because the state only requires 72 hours, I think, for a reason. They're trying to help towns because there are things that maybe need to go on, you know.
I think the 72 hours is so that the people can have the chance to review the
that's the
materials.
minimum.
Yeah, that's the minimum. So if you wanted to say, hey, this would be changing the rules of procedure to something like that would be something greater than 72. And so I think it's a worthy goal, but to just turn that around and instantaneously, I'm not sure that I can do that. I mean, remember, we just have a new secretary, so there's a lot of training that has to go in there. And so
And I don't want to be misunderstood, and I know, I respect the work that you do, and I think we all do, but we do have that goal that we want to get to. And I get that for the first meeting, it's going to be you getting it faster, because it's less time for you to prep. And I do think, only being able to submit it 2 weeks prior is going to be a necessity if we roll it back, and that's okay, because like Terry said, we can slow pedal it. But you know best what this is going to entail with our goals that we're trying to do to get this a little earlier, a week is what we're wanting. What would you suggest is the easiest way to transfer to that? How can you see that happening?
Okay, so I know we have the 72-hour rule. My goal has always been to make it 96 hours, but there have been times, probably 3 times I can think of, that, oh my gosh, we had to push it to that, like right before the 72 hours because of some reason. I didn't have XYZ something to include in the packet. And I did try once to do packet piecemeal, and you drove you guys crazy. You let me know very quickly that you didn't want it piecemeal. So if I submit something piecemeal, you didn't like it. And so if I have to wait for the entire contents of the entire packet, and I'm waiting for one item, then I have to wait for one item because you've let me know, that you didn't want it piecemeal. So if you're willing to change that, then we could submit things earlier to you but we might be waiting on one document. And there's a lot of different things that go into that. It might be an ordinance, it might be like this. I've been trying to get this guy to, I met with him, I first called him immediately. He came out, and then I had the other fellow. I'm still waiting on a quote from him. Please just write it down. It doesn't have to be fancy. Please just write it down. These guys are very low tech, apparently, and please just write it down. So I'm still waiting on that. I have not received that, and that was 2 weeks ago.
Okay, Tara, as a point of order, we have a motion. Can we follow up on that? Either kill it or second it?
Finish the motion.
The motion is to change the date that the entire packet will be delivered to the council to 7 days prior to the meeting. So it would be Tuesday night at 6:30.
Can we say by July? Can we, because
Well,
we're
we
asking
can-
for
we
one
can amend it,
expedited
but that's-
meeting.
Can
Is all
you-
we're asking for.
Can you,
And then we catch up.
Okay.
It's one expedited meeting. So,
You're saying by July?
well, I'm just suggesting, can we amend that motion, Mike, to say July or August? To give her some time to get our thoughts together and then have one expedited meeting?
Yes, your motion can give us a date that you want it done
Yeah,
by.
I'm fine with that. I'm not trying to spring it on you. I would
Well-
like to be working towards us having,
That
as
is a
team,
worthy
more
goal.
time.
It is a worthy goal, but you understand you've just changed my entire month schedule completely, and hers.
Well, that's if we did it right now, but I'm hearing Terry
Okay.
suggest that we say, okay, an introduction date of June or July.
Mhm.
So between now and then, we start working on adding a day here or there so that we get a little better about it. Because like I said, the alternative is we just start tabling lots of stuff, which sort of
Mhm.
defeats the whole point of meeting if we're not going to actually work anything.
Is July?
So okay, so can I pull it out here? So if you get it on Friday, which is 96 hours, if you had even 2 more days, would that help?
Yes. Yeah, anything.
Even 2 more days?
Yeah.
Because you understand that if you push it back like you're wanting to, I think it would have unintended consequences that you don't even see. I just know that you would have things that would not be allowed on the agenda, and it would cause us to be delayed in several
Okay,
things.
so I'll amend my motion to.
This time that weren't allowed, so.
I'll amend my motion to all materials relating to regular meetings need to be delivered to the council 5 days prior. That would be 2 more than 3, right?
120 hours.
120 hours.
Okay.
And okay, that's more digestible, thank you.
Starting in July.
And that would panic.
Was it still July?
I know, we're both like panicking.
Is
like,
that
oh my
enough,
God.
is that enough time starting in July?
Well, so we're already in May, we got June, okay, so starting with the July meeting, I amend my motion to say all materials relating to a regular council meeting must be delivered to the council members no less than 120 hours prior to the meeting, beginning with the July 2022 meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to amend the rules of procedure to have the deadline for the mayor and the secretary to provide the agenda to the council members 120 hours prior to the regular meeting by the July 2022 meeting. Is there a second? Terry Fowler seconded it. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Okay, July. Thank you. Okay, so moving on, number 9. Oh, okay, it wasn't intentional. All right, so number 8. I don't have a sheet for number 8.
It's for number 8, discuss and
What's
consider
number
agenda
9?
process.
I have
Shelley
number-
Smith, 18730 FM 1565. The agenda process also involves notifying citizens, does it not?
Yes.
Under the current agenda process, is the notice of a meeting of a governmental body required to be posted in a place readily accessible to the general public at all times for at least 72 hours before the scheduled time of the meeting?
Yes.
Was this process followed?
Yes.
Where?
At the current annex building on the door.
No, it's not.
It was followed.
It was not there on Saturday. It was not there on Sunday.
I put it myself, and I took a picture, I believe, on Saturday, and I sent it to So yes, it was.
I want to see
Now,
that picture
on
with
the
the
door of the
timestamp.
sanctuary, on the annex door.
And the annex door is the one on the, kind of around the corner, 90 degrees from the, there was nothing there on Saturday or Sunday.
So I was there.
Or Monday.
I was there at Saturday afternoon, because that's when, yes, I was there, and it was posted.
Oh, would you please send me that picture and the timestamp?
I do sometimes take pictures. I'm not 100% sure if I did or not, but I think I sent it to.
The picture would have it on there.
Now, aren't we
To one
also
of-
putting it on the website, though?
It is on the website, too.
At the same instant, right? I mean,
At the same time, actually, that's usually posted earlier.
And I tell you, here's the thing. See, even tonight and at other meetings, the mayor has mentioned that several of our citizens don't have internet, don't have phone, all this kind of thing. And I don't want meetings to just kind of like slip past those poor people.
So I would, once we get a permanent